Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know, there we go. We got internet problem. I got a World War III alert. Be sure to wipe your feet when you're coming into the House of Revolution. Let's hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform. I got to get into some of this geopolitical information, y'all. There's been so much going on, Shalom Queen, that we've been missing out on the global stage. They trying to distract us with this Kamala Harris, Joe Biden thing. Remember, I told y'all, World War III is what's next. They already did assassination attempt, tried it on Trump. World War III is what's next, and Israel is weak as it ever can be, and it's being humiliated. And let's just get into that piece of information. Netanyahu is also, don't forget, Netanyahu is in America right now, finna try to humiliate Biden and the Democratic Party and force Americans to support his World War III.
Tel Aviv was hit by the Yemeni armed forces with their new drone for the first time, overnight on July 19, 2024. The targeted location was within 100 meters of the American consulate, implying a strategic message. The drone, named Yafa, cannot be detected or stopped by advanced defense systems. This time, Yafa UAV ended its days in Tel Aviv, after making an incredible journey of 2,000 kilometers from Sana'a. Viral videos circulated online. While the drone was flying freely, no red warning siren was activated during the attack, and the drone exploded strongly towards its target.
Always remember when they say Israel failed to detect this drone and shoot it down. Israel is not the only country in the state of Israel. American bases is there. NATO bases is there. Why the Americans didn't detect it and shoot the drone down?
The spokesman for the Yemeni Armed Forces, General Yahya Sari, in a statement, stated that the Yemeni Air Force carried out the operation using a UAV called Yafa, which is capable of bypassing enemy anti-air systems, and declared Tel Aviv a strike zone, which will be a strike zone, and declared the city unsafe from now on.
ولا تستطيع الرادارات اكتشافها وقد حققت العملية أهدافها بنجاح.
Some unconfirmed reports said the attack killed an Israeli man and wounded at least 10 others. Yemeni forces stated that they only launched one drone towards Tel Aviv. Amazingly, Yafa cannot be intercepted by Iron Dome.
That was only the beginning. Israel did retaliate, but that's not the point. Yemen want them to retaliate because Yemen want war with Israel. Now, let's see what exactly did Israel do. But it's a trap for Israel because after Israel attacked Yemen, Yemen declared it will continue to attack Tel Aviv. That's the capital.
Say that they shot down a ballistic missile fired by Houthi militants in Yemen, targeting the southern city of Eilat. Israel says it has used its long-range Arrow 3 defense system, popularly known as Missile Killer, to intercept the enemy missile. Our next report telling you more.
Israel's missile killer has thwarted yet another attack by the Houthis in Yemen. Israel flexed its military muscle as its Arrow 3 intercepted a Yemeni missile tried to target Eilat, the southernmost city of Israel. Sirens blared in Eilat amid fears of falling shrapnel. It was the first attack by Iran-backed rebels after Israel founded the Yemeni port city of Hodeidah. Although Houthis claimed responsibility for the Elite attack, there was no report of any immediate impact in the region.
نفذت القوة الصاروخية في القوات المسلحة اليمنية عملية عسكرية نوعية استهدفت أهدافا مهمة في منطقة أم الرشراش جنوبية فلسطين المحتلة.
The Arrow 3 is a hypersonic ballistic missile system that is designed to take out enemy missiles when they are still outside the atmosphere. With an impressive flight range of up to 2,400 kilometers, it detects, tracks, intercepts, and fires a hit-to-kill warhead. The long-range missile has successfully decimated dozens of ballistic missiles in the past. It proved its mettle during the Iron Swords War, protecting Israel's skies and population. The missile system is designed to protect Israel against potential air threats from Iran. The Israeli Defense System and the U.S. Defense Agency supervise Arrow 3 operations. Israel has sent out a strong message to Iran amid escalating exchange of fire.
ולסיום, יש לי מסר לאויבי ישראל. אל תטעו בנו. נגן על עצמנו בכל דרך ובכל חזית. כל מי שיפגע בנו ישלם מחיר כבד מאוד על תוקפנותו.
In the face of the Houthi claims of having breached Israel's Iron Dome defense with a drone strike on Friday, Sunday's Arrow defense by Israel indicates that Tel Aviv's shields are still formidable. Bureau Report, Beyond World is One.
So Israel did retaliate, but they are humiliated by the Houthi rebels. Let's see. Let's dig a little deeper into this humiliation. Hold on, all right, let's document this because Putin have sided with the Yemeni rebels, and the reason he's siding with them is because Israel has decided to help Ukraine, where they should help him. Zelensky, that's his brethren. So Putin has said he will arm the Houthis with anti-ship missiles and things of that nature. He also has a problem with the U.S. arming Ukraine. Putin said he would be sending advanced anti-ship missiles and some of these new advanced drones that can't be detected. Putin is not coming up with advanced drones by himself that can't be detected.
Крестюш, ты видишь, кто это такой?
We didn't want the U.S. and Israel to fall for the Yemeni trap. It's going to be bad news. Defeat Hamas. state, Israel, NATO, the U.S.
Yes, I do.
Putin did this, so it won't be no surprise on how Yemen is doing what it's doing. How you think? Putin said they was going to be able to do this to you. If he was going to give them the weapons to do it to you. If you want to get in his business, it's about minding your business.
For the first time. And the way they did this is quite unbelievable, because the drone was not even detected by the Israeli air defenses. They have no clue that it was even in the air. Do you understand what a serious security risk that is? It is inconceivable that in today's day and age, you can fire any projectile at a country or an entity like Israel, which claims to be such a giant military power, and have them not know about it. And not only that, it hit Tel Aviv. Okay, so this is supposed to be the capital, the most highly guarded prize. Yes? Look at the video.
Ты видишь, дрон летит? Кристюш, ты видишь, что это такое?
I mean, did you hear how loud that thing is? It's like a toothbrush, an electric toothbrush mixed with a moped. And how low it was flying as well, right? Look how low that thing was. That is unbelievable. On target. This is a diplomatic quarter. Do you know that? So not only is this a scandal, a security scandal, but for all the embassies that are located there, the consulates, to be put in such danger is really unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. You just casually fly a drone in. Now, I want to show you on the map where this is. So I went in and I found the exact location on Google Maps with the street view, okay? This is where the American embassy is located, as a matter of fact. You can see it's the same place as in the video, right? See that building there? We're in the same place. So it's a diplomatic quarter, and right there, that's the American embassy. The Americans, obviously, they moved their embassy to Jerusalem because Donald Trump wanted to appease the Israelis. So they have another branch, a consulate that's still in Tel Aviv. Okay, just to be clear on that point. Nevertheless, was that the target? That's not known. I don't think that the Yemenis were out for blood from the Americans. I don't think that was the point. The point was just to send a message to both the Americans and Israelis that we can get you. We are able to reach you, and you're not even going to know what hit you. So please understand how historic this moment is. It is unbelievable that 2 weeks ago, Hezbollah are flying drones over the Golan Heights, the Syrian Golan Heights, which are occupied by Israel, filming, footage, just casually filming military sites, surveillance sites that belong to the Israelis. And the Israelis have no clue, none. And then they do the same thing with Haifa, with the port, and they film all of the economic, the top. So they've done the top military and top economic sites, and then publish the videos to show the Israelis, we can get you, we can reach you. We've got surveillance, drones, and we've got attack drones, and you're not even going to detect them or know that they're there. This is unbelievable, really true, really something we've never seen before. So now there's speculation about where did the drone come from? Where did the drone come from? Because Yemen is obviously very far away. I mean, we've looked at how Yemen have struck Eilat before. Okay, so that's the port over here on the Red Sea. But this is what some people speculate the route was. So to avoid detection by all the American ships, all of the Israeli, French, and British ships, because, you know, America and Britain have nothing better to do in the world than to serve Israel's security interests. You know, it's not like there are poor people and homeless people and people who are struggling that need the money. No, let's spend it on you know, adventures in the Red Sea. In any case, all of these ships that are here, the Yemenis just avoided that. They went over Sudan, over Egypt, and then they circumvented the Sinai and then came in from the Mediterranean Sea, which is really genius because the Israelis are not looking towards the Mediterranean Sea, and no one is looking towards that direction of the Mediterranean Sea for Yemeni drones because that's what they least expect. You know, it reminds me of the Japanese overrunning British positions in World War II because the naval guns were fixed and built in place. I mean, these things are absolutely colossal. They're monumental, enormous things, and they're put in place facing the sea, right, to repel a sea invasion. And the Japanese just invaded and came from the back. This is exactly how you succeed in battle. If I can provide a similar analogy. And not only did the first drone hit, they sent another one after 6 hours, and they also didn't intercept it. I mean, this is such an embarrassment. It's such an embarrassment, and it's such a military and political achievement for the Yemenis. Unbelievable, really unbelievable. It's crazy that we're in these times. And this is the leader of Ansar Allah, Houthi, speaking afterwards, and this is what he had to say.
يمني وأطلقتها قوة يمنية هي قوة الطيران المسير في الجيش اليمني
deep underground.
وليست كما يسميها البعض لأنها صنعت في بلدان أخرى أو أطلقت من بلدان أخرى. بعض لا يطيقون.
So he's saying that air power is one of Yemen's forts, okay? One of Yemen's fortes. And the drone was built locally. It's a Yemeni product. Again, this story just keeps getting more and more impressive. Because this drone, we've never seen it used before, you understand? And this is what I was talking about. What I often mention is that you have a certain psychological element to the deterrence that is enacted by the resistance, okay? So basically, by not revealing, you know, your cards, the enemy's going crazy and paranoid and growing fearful, imagining, you know, and looking and trying to find out and wasting resources and time on what arsenal do you possess, okay? And Hezbollah and Iran and the Yemenis, they have specifically avoided using their best weapons precisely for, you know, for a rainy day. They're saving them for a rainy day, precisely in the event where the war really becomes a regional war, and they're going to need them more than ever, and that will take the Israelis again by surprise. Okay, so this thing, just to be clear, this drone that traveled. I mean, look at the distance, please. Look how far it traveled, 2,600 kilometers, right? It not only spent 16 hours in the air, it was undetected, it hit the target, and then did it a second time in the same day. And that is not even their best weapon. This is something that they're just, you know, they're sort of using as a deterrent and trying to, you know, play on the Israelis psychologically and the Americans as well. Especially after the massacres that happened in the refugee camps in Gaza, in Mawasi and everything else. Look at the reaction from this Israeli American.
This is the American embassy. This is the American embassy. And they tell us death to America, death to Israel. We don't joke.
God, she's so funny. This is the American embassy. It's the American embassy. Oh, what? So it's, you know, more special than the Iranian embassy that you blew up with 6 missiles? Where were you then? Zayo Barbie? The American embassy. You know, it's this supremacist attitude. Who gives a fuck? You're from America, big deal.
We don't joke. There are a lot of police.
I mean, she turns the camera and it's like everything is perfectly intact. The buildings are all there. There's electricity. The roads are perfectly functional. Nothing is destroyed. There are no people on the floor screaming. No one is injured. I mean, Christ, like they're trying so hard to make themselves to be, you know, make themselves out to be victims. It's really, really unbelievable. What do you think? What are you trying to show us? You think you're in Gaza? Try being in Gaza. You wouldn't last a day. That's real suffering. No one even knows who she is. Now, don't get me wrong. There were casualties. So the toll up until now is one Israeli who is killed, and you have 9 injured. And I think, again, I don't know if this is correct or not, but there are rumors that the person killed was a sniper in the Israeli army. Now, that I'm not. Please don't misunderstand. That doesn't mean the Yemenis were trying to assassinate some specific sniper in Tel Aviv. No. The point is that Israelis are so militarized because they all have to join the army that if you just randomly fire into Tel Aviv, you will hit someone who is a sniper or, performing some kind of murderous task that oppresses Palestinians, right? But again, that's not confirmed. I'm just telling you what's being reported. It's not confirmed though, that specific detail. Now you can see here, this is the U.S. Embassy, just in the vicinity quickly. But I mean, it's just a video showing you how close it was to the strike. Now, look, honestly, think logically. If Yemen have drones like this that can travel thousands of kilometers undetected by all the brilliant minds and the technologically superior Westerners and land without you knowing, I'm pretty sure they can be accurate if they want to. I'm pretty sure, right? So if they were, my point is, if they were really going to go after the U.S. Embassy, they would have hit the U.S. Embassy. Okay, so I don't think there's any point in making it bigger than it is. The idea was to show the Americans and Israelis, wherever you are, whatever defenses you think you have, you're misguided. Here, this is a bit of the damage afterwards. And so what happens afterwards? Well, of course, the media come in, the Western media, and they start trying to create a sob story for the Israelis. Take a look.
This is central Tel Aviv where the attack happened. To give you an idea of the location, the US Embassy is just over here. You can see the flag fluttering in the distance. The Mediterranean Sea is just beyond that. Now, according to people that we've spoken to, this is a residential area. They believe that was the target of the attack. And you can see some of the...
You just said the American Embassy is there. It's not a residential... I mean, look, obviously diplomatic quarters also have apartment buildings and so on, but like, which one is it? I mean, it can be both. I don't know why he's mentioning the American Embassy and then saying the residents were the targets.
Nah, it's a military district.
Residential area. They believe that was the target of the...
Perhaps he's pointing at the American Embassy, but it's cut off. Maybe I misunderstood. It's okay. I'll let him finish.
Attack, and you can see some of the damage here. If you look up at this building, people reported hearing 2 blasts, a primary blast and then a secondary one. And the shrapnel and the fallout from the blast wave hit the buildings over here. Cars have been damaged as well from the falling fragments. You can see the window here of this car has been shattered. We also...
Oh, heaven, pray. You don't say. The window of this car has been shattered. I believe you mean the windscreen, the windshield. Yes, that's going to rack up quite the bill, I can imagine.
Yeah,
wow, the horror. Oh no, you got people in Gaza, children walking on foot because there are no ambulances and rescue services, walking to the hospital, if they can find one, with their limbs like hanging off like this, or their jaws hanging off. But yeah, the poor windscreen. Oh no.
Also spoke to one man who told us his friend was killed in this attack. He was sleeping on one of the roofs of the buildings here, and it's believed he was...
That's crazy. Every time Israel bomb Gaza, they also kill families, entire families in their beds who are sleeping. Wow. Crazy, It's not nice, is it? Can we agree on that? It's not nice. So maybe, the Israelis shouldn't do that.
Hit by falling shrapnel. Now, although there is loss of life and although there is damage here in central Tel Aviv, it's not that is the most significant thing. This will be claimed as a major victory by Israel's enemies. It is symbolic. They've managed.
No, it is objectively a military victory. What the hell is wrong with you, man?
Bullshit.
Like, he has to say, like, Israel's enemies, you know, like he wants to put this image in your mind that there's like some, you know, some Iranian puppet master, like who says, oh, the Jews, and somewhere plotting against it. Dude, it is a military victory, and it's done by the Yemenis, and they're doing it to help Gaza. I don't understand. Is Britain and America, you know, aren't Britain and America and 50 countries helping Ukraine fight Russia? Why can't Yemen help Gaza? What's wrong with that? It's you know, he tries to make it out to be like some sinister plot, and like it's a propaganda thing. No, a propaganda thing would not be real. Okay, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be fake, but still, this actually happened. You're the one giving us a damn tour. You're literally there giving us a tour of what happened. It is a military victory, objectively speaking. Jesus.
They've managed to hit the commercial, to be claimed as a major victory by Israel's enemies. It is symbolic. They've managed to hit the commercial capital of the country. And as for the Israeli defense forces, they will be now looking at how to respond to this attack in the heart of the Jewish state.
There we go. You know, try and use your brain cells to think about Israel's behavior and not its religion. And I think you will make progress as a human being, and especially as someone who works in news. Just try it. Just think, why do people fight the Israelis? What is it they don't like? Is it the religion or the behavior? It's the behavior, you know, it's the behavior. So let's talk about Israel's response. What response do you think this elicited from the Israelis? Well, obviously, the only thing Israelis can do is bomb civilian targets, as usual. But just before I continue, I just want to give you one last thing about this, but which is such a good troll on the part of the Yemenis, and so Yemeni. It's such a Yemeni thing to do. So apparently, they published these evacuation orders online, right? And they made them in the style of the Israeli ones, okay? So it's just like what the Israelis give the Palestinians almost on a daily basis. They drop them by air, they post them online and say, oh, look, if you're in this, and this place, you're in danger, you better leave. And then if you don't leave because you don't want to leave your house because some foreign soldier barked an order at you, well, they'll bomb you in your house. But then that's your fault because Hamas is using you as a human shield, right? So that's Israeli logic. Get out, go away. And if you don't do that, well, too bad, we can kill you. It's your fault. You didn't listen. That's Israeli logic. Always victim blaming. Murder people and then blame the dead people for, you know, being dead. So the Yemenis issued an Israeli-style warning saying, if you're in Tel Aviv, you're in danger. You need to go. You need to get out. You know, just the same way that the Israelis tell Palestinians, you know, they play ping pong with them and just, you know, jerk them around. There's another one also over here. Look. You're in a dangerous combat zone. Now, look, obviously, I'm not saying Yemen airdropped these things over Tel Aviv. I think they were just made for, you know, to troll the Israelis, especially online. But it is such a taste, you know, it is but a small taste of their own medicine, because you can't compare the scale of the attack, you know, and obviously no one is literally forcing Israelis to leave their houses in Tel Aviv the same way that they are in Gaza, right? But it's the principle. It's that, look, we're going to warn you. We're going to say Tel Aviv is not safe, and here's an evacuation order. And whatever happens is on you. Taste of your own medicine. That's what you keep telling Palestinians. And not just Palestinians, by the way. Guess what? The anniversary of... yes, today's the 22nd, okay? 22nd of July. I'm going to talk about King David Hotel bombing in a bit. And once again, we have Israelis victim blaming. So afterwards, the Israelis did this.
أثناء استهداف ميناء الحديدة بقارات الطيران الصهيوني الأمريكي. استهداف منشآت النفط وأحد كرينات تنزيل الحاوية.
That's the Israeli retaliation. Yemen's wanted them to do. That's war.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. يوم القيامة.
Burned it, right? They bombed Yemen. The Israelis bombed Hodeidah, which is the most important and the main port city of Yemen. And what did they strike? Take a guess. A power station and a fuel depot. You know, civilian infrastructure as usual, because the Israelis, you know, they can't fight. They can't do anything that actually entails military victories. Just make people suffer, you know. And so they killed, let me give you the tally. So they killed 6 people in Yemen and wounded more than 80. And I think those figures have actually risen to a bit more. I think it's actually 9 people dead now and more than 90 wounded. But you can, you know, the point is that this is tenfold, quite literally tenfold, the amount of casualties that they conceded themselves. And this is always the Israeli equation, because if you think you're superior to everybody else, well, if one Israeli is killed, then, you know, one Israeli is worth 100 people, right? That's the, or 10 people. That's the Israeli logic. And you see this applied time and time and time again, right? Because it's a supremacist cult. They literally, they openly call themselves the chosen people. And they're not even actually the Jews that lived there 3,000 years ago. Those are the Palestinians, because they never left. But anyway, that's, you know. So this is what they did, because, you know, they can't fight. And I want to show you the response from the Yemenis, because, I mean, just listen to this.
ضحي بالغالي والنفيس. والله احنا يعني كلما زادونا ضربا ازددنا حبا لاهل فلسطين واهل غزه. رغم الضربات احنا متعودين، ايش احنا نخسر؟ احنا متعودين، احنا هم اللي اذا طفى عليهم الانترنت ولا هذا تقع عندهم مصيبه. احنا اهل البأس، احنا اولو القوه، احنا اولو البأس الشديد. لا نخاف من احد، ضربوا يضربوا. والله يضربوا، فخر لنا ان احنا نوقف مع اخواننا في غزه، فخر لنا لجميع العرب، لانهم شوف الخذلان اللي بيخذلوا غزه رغم المآسي اللي بتحصل والمجازر، واحنا جالسين نتفرج عليهم. ضحي بالغالي والنفيس. والله احنا يعني.
Wow. I mean, that is amazing. You heard what he said. He said, despite the strikes, you know, we're used to it. And you know, his point was basically, better they strike us in Yemen than the Palestinians. We would rather take the punches from the Israelis than see the Palestinians being hit. You know, like basically throwing yourself in front of someone to save them. That is what the Yemenis have been doing the whole time. And by the way, the same can be said of Syria and Iran. The main reason they are demonized is because they defend the Palestinians. That is a fact. And of course, you can go and start finding problems and then, you know, use those to criticize the country. But the main reason is because they support Palestinians. But I want to focus on the Yemenis here, because they really are taking punches from Israel, from the United States, from the United Kingdom, and not just taking the punches, hitting back 10 times harder. They've surprised everyone. They have surprised everyone. And they really put the Arab world to shame. They put the Arab world to shame. Or I should say not the Arab world, but they put the bulk of Arab leaders who are, you know, in the pockets of the West to shame. They really do. I mean, this man, I have no idea who this man is who is speaking the car. He has more dignity and courage in his pinky finger than you know, any leader in Jordan or Egypt or Saudi Arabia. And that's a fact. I swear, Yemenis are the salt of the earth. I love them. I love them so much. There's nothing like them. There's no one like them. Really. And look at the protests. Every week, the size of the crowds, literally millions of people. Every single week. There's no protest movement like that anywhere else in the world. And they come out for Palestine. And Yemen have been bombed. They've been going through hell for 10 years because of the same people because of the United States, because of Germany, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, France, selling and funneling weapons to Saudi Arabia that are then used to bomb Yemen. And Israel bombing the fuel depot, just to give you an idea how evil that is and why they're trying to target civilian infrastructure. I wrote a report 2 years ago with a friend, a Yemeni economist. Okay, so I didn't know him at the time. He approached me and we talked, and then we decided to write this together. You know, he worked at the World Bank. He's an Oxford graduate, and he hates what they're doing to his country, right? So we sat down and we just took all the numbers, the public figures, right, which are an understatement of the suffering that is in Yemen. But just to prove the point that even with these public figures from the IMF and the World Bank, you still come to the conclusion that what they're doing to Yemen is horrific. And what were they doing? You have fuel ships that would sail to Yemen, and then the Saudis and their coalition would intercept the ships and just hold them for, 6 months, 4 months, sometimes a year. And people in Yemen are waiting for the fuel. You need fuel for everything. Most of the electricity grid runs on fuel. No fuel, no electricity, right? You need electricity to produce things, to run bakeries, to make, to produce medicine, to have a pharmaceutical industry functioning. For everything, literally everything requires fuel. And when you don't have that, currency then is devalued. You've got inflation. I mean, it's a disaster. It spirals into chaos. And not only that, they wouldn't allow the fuel to go to the main port, Hodeidah, which is the one the Israelis just bombed, right? They bombed that because they know the Yemenis depend on it. It's the lifeline into Yemen. That's why they bombed it, because they're so vindictive. And so what the Saudis would do, and this coalition, with the support of the United States, complete support, lay the ships, unload them in a different port at Aden, and then make the drivers tour the entire damn country. And while they're touring the country, they get stopped by a million different groups, like highway robbery, literally highway robbery. Pay us this money or you can't pass. Okay, then the next checkpoint, then the next checkpoint. And by the time the trucks get to Sana'a, to the capital, the price of the fuel has doubled or tripled. Do you understand this kind of situation that they engineered on the Yemenis? And so for Israel to go and bomb a fuel depot when fuel is so scarce in Yemen because of Israel, because of Saudi Arabia, because of the UK, because of America, is just evil. They're so vindictive, and they're such sore losers and pathetic strategists. They suck, and they can't win anything militarily, so they lash out against civilians. Yemenis don't care. They will not yield. You have to understand something. They picked the worst. They picked the worst adversaries. I'm telling you. Yemenis will not yield. They will not. There's no one like them. There really isn't.
It's a fact. It was a trap.
So do you know what happened afterwards? Do you know what happened after Israel bombed Yemen? The Yemenis fired missiles immediately. There was no time. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to respond in a week. No, immediately, missiles. The Israelis were able to shoot down one. That means the rest of them went through.
לא, זה חץ.
You see it in the sky, yeah? It's chasing the missile. I mean, I'm sorry. The Israelis have no air defenses to speak of. They're getting pulverized by Hezbollah in the north. They're getting, punched, sucker punched by the Yemenis in the south. Forget it, man. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. The Israelis are not what you think they are. They're not this fighting force of like 50 years ago. What October 7th did, what Al-Aqsa flood did, is reverse everything. Everything. And I'm not just talking about for the Palestinians. It brought back, it compensated for and washed away the shame and the frustration of losing more and more land in 48 and then also in 56 with the Suez Crisis, and then 67, and then with 73, and on and on and on. And then all the annexations. It reversed that frustration. And it didn't just happen on one day, okay? It didn't just happen during 24 hours. It's been a continuous operation, and that has resulted in more and more humiliations, right? And this is one of those humiliations. Please understand the point that I'm trying.
Revolutionary salute to Nina 812 for the donation to the war chest. She said, King Y 2-time coach for 722 for 722.24. I'm on my revolutionary business. Appreciate the donation. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate you. Salute.
Trying to impress upon you is that it's not about what you like politically or you disagree with. Purely objectively speaking, this is a huge military accomplishment. It just is, and it's not only surprising, it's incredible that the Yemenis did this, especially when they themselves have so many problems, also because of the same enemy, and are barely getting by. They put aside their own worries, they put aside their own troubles and their own difficulties, and really give everything for the Palestinians. And that's more than, and that's more that can be said for, all these rich oil countries in the Persian Gulf,
Egypt ain't did
who
nothing.
are in America's pocket and couldn't care less. They could do so much. They don't care. So at the same time, and not many people talked about this, but in the same 24 hours, the Iraqis also fired at Israel at Haifa, okay? And this is something we've been seeing more and more, where the Yemenis and the Iraqis get together and they'll organize a joint operation where they fire drones and missiles at various ports that are occupied by Israel. And something that I should tell you that you should note is that this new drone that Yemen used, okay, the one that they used to strike Tel Aviv, is called Yafa. Why is it called Yafa? Because Tel Aviv itself, the city, used to be called Yafa. Okay, the Israelis are not just colonizers in the sense that they steal the land and so on. They want to erase any form of Arab culture. They want to erase the entire identity of the people that lived in this area for thousands of years. And so they do that by renaming the places, just like Palestine itself, just rename it Israel. And so this was done on purpose, that they struck Yafa, which is occupied by Israel, with a new drone called Yafa.
Revolutionary salute to Spiritual Rising for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the donation, Queen. Salute.
Okay, that was the point of it. And I mean, this is just what we know now. So I can't even imagine what else they possess. And I'm certain that the Israelis are also panicking right now and wondering what to do. But they really they screwed with the wrong one. I mean, you don't want to fight against the Yemenis. You really are never going to win. The Saudis couldn't win when it was colonized by Britain. Also got expelled. You're not going to win. You're not going to win. The determination that these people have is unreal. It's absolutely unreal.
وتهددوننا بالحرب أيها الأغبياء أو ما علمتم أن أهل الحرب أنتم عندما تهددوننا بالحرب أنتم كمن يهدد مريضا بالعافية تعالوا واحشدوا جيوشكم وشداد آفاقكم فالويل لكم الويل يا من جاء يبغي ذلنا وتهددوننا بال
And that's not just talk. One of the key elements that Arabs possess, it's not just oil as a natural resource, it's the
Revolutionary salute to our brother D. Prescott for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, King. Salute.
Trade routes and the straits. Egypt did nothing. The leadership in Egypt did nothing. And so Yemen is the one that took up that role. Out of all the Arab countries, and not just Arab countries, but in the world, one of the poorest countries.
All those Arab kingdoms gonna fall.
They rose to the challenge and fulfilled their duty as Arabs, as Muslims, and just simply as human beings. If you told me, 2 years ago that Hezbollah in Yemen would have undetectable surveillance and attack drones flying over the entire Middle East that can't be caught, I mean, I wouldn't have believed you.
Impossible.
How's that possible? It's possible, man. Best believe. We are living in a new period. We're living in incredible times. Politically, militarily, economically, everything is changing.
See?
Everything is changing.
That's why they distracting us with this Kamala Harris, Joe Biden BS. That's why they're distracted, because they're getting defeated and humiliated in Ukraine. They're getting humiliated in the Middle East. They're getting humiliated in Africa with the rise of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. I mean, that China, I just played it last night on my live. The humiliation, China just whooped their butt in some electronic warfare in the South China Sea. Humiliated them. Come on now. But these people will never back down. So they are intensifying things.
It's unbelievable,
And Kamala Harris is married to a small hat. Never forget that. They already sees her. Her politics gonna be their politics.
I mean, from the thing with Trump, right, to Biden being pushed out, to what's happening to the Israelis on the battlefield, BRICS. I mean, everything is changing. It's really quite bewildering and astonishing to behold.
Didn't a small hat just try to assassinate Trump? That guy was a small hat. His family are small hats.
The Yemenis are not going to be deterred. I mean, the Israelis, the best thing for them is to simply stop the genocide. And this evacuation order here that said that they should leave through Ben Gurion Airport, right? That they should go through Ben Gurion. There was another one. I can't find it right now, but this one said the Negev Desert. So that was again taking basically a jab at the Israelis who were telling Palestinians go into the Sinai Desert. That it's a reference to that. The difference is that Yemenis don't actually want to put people in the desert and turn them into refugees and displace them. Only Israelis do that, and do that repeatedly. But honestly, this is a losing battle for the Israelis on every single front. I don't know what they're going to achieve by continuing like this. They're done. They are toast. They are toast. Again, YouTube demonetized my channel because I'm not allowed to say naughty things about Israel.
The goal is to drag in the Americans, so they will save face. And it's not just them getting defeated. They want NATO to be defeated at the same time. So Israel will look like, we was taking on the whole world. You're right. You got defeated by Hamas, a militia.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syrian Analysis. I'm your host, Kirill Kalmasian. Thank you very much for tuning in today's, guys, live streaming. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching us on YouTube or on Rumble. I'm very pleased to have back Syed Muhammad Marandi, professor at Tehran University. And in Arabic, we say he is ghaniyun an al-ta'rif. He's too famous to introduce him to you, and his participation in the literature of the West Asian politics is very important. And I would like to hear his thoughts about what's happening nowadays in West Asia, especially in regards to the always escalation, let's say, in West Asia. Since 7-8 months, we haven't seen any de-escalation, but always escalation. But before that, Dr. Marandi, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about the withdrawal of Joe Biden, who actually, if you ask any objective person, he literally lost his memory. He is demented. He's started confusing other people's wives with his wife, and it was really embarrassing for the U.S. politics. And now he withdrew from the race, and he endorsed even worse candidate Kamala Harris to replace him.
Thank you for the invitation and the very kind words. I think it was pretty much expected, at least from people, those people who I respect a great deal. Their belief was that ultimately Biden would step down, and they've been saying it for quite a while. Now, some may say that that's pure speculation, but I think it was inevitable. But what has happened does show how dirty American politics are and how corrupt their families are. The very fact that Biden's family would allow this demented person to be humiliated so regularly on television in front of the public, his son, his wife, and others, it just shows what sort of society they live in, what sort of elites exists in the United States, what sort of bubble there is. And that bubble is the same bubble at a larger scale that believes the United States is exceptional, that it is destined to be above and beyond everyone else, and that it is a state that is like a city on a hill. So the United States is a country full of corruption at the top that not only exists at the family level, as we see with the president, but it exists among the elites who are utterly corrupt. As we'll see soon, the Senate and the House will be receiving the Hitler of our time, the Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi of our time, and they will be celebrating his presence in Washington. And it's because the United States is so utterly corrupt at the top. The elites openly support genocide. They support the Holocaust of Gaza, a Holocaust that has claimed the lives of roughly 200,000 people, according to the report published by The Lancet. So while it's not going to change U.S. politics, Biden will be remembered as a genocidal president who helped carry out the first genocide that is being witnessed across the world, live, literally. We've never seen that happen before. There was a genocide. The Saudis, the Americans, the Emiratis, the Europeans, the Canadians, the Australians, New Zealand, all of them were helping carry out the genocide in Yemen. But we didn't see it the way we see what they're doing to Gaza. And, or for example, they killed hundreds of thousands of people through their dirty war in Syria, or the destruction of Libya. But we never saw these. Even Iraq, when they invaded, we never saw the details that we see today in Gaza. And Gaza is especially horrific because so many people are trapped in such a small place. So I think it's the only significance of his departure is that it's a reminder of how corrupt these families and these elites are, and how corrupt the whole political elites are in the United States. But it's not going to have any impact. There's no real or substantial difference between Biden and Trump or Kamala Harris or anyone else at the top. In the United States, you don't get to the top unless you are corrupt. Even now, the divisions that we see over Ukraine, they didn't exist before. Both parties were a part of this process. They betrayed the Minsk Accords. They betrayed the promises they gave to Russia about the expansion of NATO. They deployed new weapons closer to the Russian border. They were constant, and then they carried out the coup in Ukraine, and they both assisted the fascists in Ukraine in killing ethnic Russians. And then, of course, we know the rest of the story. But the Republicans that now have become skeptical is because it's no longer politically expedient. It's no longer politically beneficial for them to be supportive of this war, because so many people in the United States have turned against the war, and also because so many people in the United States are suffering economically because of these endless wars.
Indeed. I just want to mention something. We always, since you mentioned the elite in the United States and how corrupt they are, and morally, let's say, they are completely detached from morality. I studied political science for a long time, and I interacted with journalists, politicians, and I always hear this like, politics is always dirty and politicians are all corrupt, this and that. And to some extent, there is always corruption in politics, but not to this extent that exists in the United States. Like, you cannot really trust a politician's word in the United States. Like, there is nothing like a gentleman agreement between you and an American politician, let alone like when you put it on ink on a paper and submit it to the UN Security Council, they can still violate that agreement like they did with the nuclear deal with Iran. So it's really, for me, this is a special case. I see it in the United States that the elites there are brutally corrupted, and it doesn't make any difference if it's Kamala or Biden. There is a system that works, and it works for them, for the elites. They are still generating billions of dollars every year by selling the weapons to Ukraine, recycling the money. They recycled $3 trillion in Afghanistan. I don't know how many trillions were lost when the 9/11 attack happened on the Pentagon. If you remember, the plane hit the floor where the calculations were happening. It's like trillions of dollars just flew out of the United States, and nobody knows in whose pocket this money have gone. I mean, we know the military-industrial complex, the bankers, but there are specific names, in my opinion, we have to a little bit dig in this. But if we go back to West Asia again, this past week, we witnessed major military tit-for-tats between Yemen and Israel. First, the Yemenis struck Tel Aviv by a drone. Then Israel responded by bombarding the Hodeidah port in western Yemen. It's important for me to know about the deterrence. What does this exchange tell us about Israel's deterrence as its enemies increasingly using relatively cheap, let's say, technology to strike deep inside Israel?
A couple of things. One is that obviously politicians are often corrupt, just as ordinary people can be corrupt in the politics at university, in neighboring shops, neighbors, people in neighborhoods. But I think this notion that politics is corrupt is something that these corrupt politicians themselves have a vested interest in declaring and repeating in order to justify their utter immorality and in order to decrease our expectations. And in fact, I think that they would like to dissuade the rest of humanity and others from entering politics because we would rather stay clean. But I don't think that it is inevitable for politicians to be corrupt. I think many politicians in our region, the leaders in Yemen or in Lebanon or resistance leaders across the board, I think they are in Iran, I think they're infinitely more moral than Western leaders. And those politicians, those activists like yourself and others who are into politics, I think that these people today are making sacrifices for the sake of their ideals, and we're all political. So it's their politics that's corrupt, and it's their power that corrupts, and they don't want others to engage in politics and become and enter that sphere of power and influence, because many others don't believe in the same ways of carrying out politics that they do. With regards to Yemen, I think again that's a great example about the sacrifices being made by the Yemeni leaders in attacking the Israeli regime. The United States was willing to offer Yemen many things in order for them to end the conflict. The same is true with Hezbollah, and the same is true
they don't want them 30
at a much larger scale with Iran. The Americans would be willing to give Iran the world if Iran would just walk away. But in Yemen, I think we see the rise of a regional power, probably in the midterm and long term, more influential than almost any other country.
That's a fact.
And perhaps even now, any country in the Arabian Peninsula. They dictate the terms in the Red Sea. They have defeated the United States in a naval war, which is unprecedented since the Second World War by the admission of Americans. So their ongoing war with the Israeli regime is nothing new. It's been going on for 9 months. And the latest attack on Tel Aviv is a sign that even the capital of Israel is vulnerable. The Iron Dome is does not provide adequate protection, and the regime is not only vulnerable in the south and in the north, but it is vulnerable in the heart of the regime. And the Israeli regime bombed Al-Hodeidah in order to create a spectacle. The destruction was not very important. It's a very small port. The fuel depot had some fuel which created a fire, and that's what they wanted. They wanted that image to show the world what they had done, but it's not really a big thing. We all have to remember that the Americans have been bombing Yemen for 8-9 months now, and they've had zero impact. And the Saudis, with American and British support, with German support, Canadian and Australian and support from New Zealand even, and France, they were carrying out a genocidal war in Yemen, and the Americans were helping implement a starvation siege in the Red Sea for almost a decade, and it had no impact on the reality on the ground. It did hurt people. Children starved and died, like in Gaza, but ultimately Yemen became stronger by the day, literally, to a point where Yemen began to strike Saudi installations with drones and missiles in larger amounts, with more drones and missiles, and the Saudis had to accept a ceasefire. So for the Israelis to spend a huge amount of money to send a number of planes all the way from the north to south of the Red Sea not only costs it more than the damage that they did, but also what the regime is doing is that they are diminishing the credibility of the already discredited Arab regimes that allow them to carry out these strikes. And this is something that I think people don't talk about nearly enough. Remember, when the Arab Spring or the awakening happened, for good or for ill, regardless of which direction it took in which country, because what we saw in Syria, for example, was no Arab Spring. It was a dirty war carried out by the Americans and Erdogan and Abdullah II and oil-rich dictatorships in the Persian Gulf, and of course NATO countries and the Israeli regime. But what happened in Tunisia was completely unexpected. No one imagined that some young man who burned himself alive would cause the dictator in Egypt to fall. The outrage today is far greater than back then. Not only is the economic situation terrible for most people, but they feel humiliated by the fact that their regimes are working with Israel. In Turkey, we are seeing how a segment of the traditional supporters of the ruling party and Erdogan went and voted for another party that is truly anti-Israel. In the long term, this is going to continue to shift Turkish politics. And I think one reason why Erdogan is now speaking about leaving Syria is because he wants to protect his political base, but also because he's under a great deal of pressure. The situation is unsustainable, and he is also being seen as providing the fuel for the Israeli killing machine. The fuel goes from the Republic of Azerbaijan to Turkey, to Israel, to Gaza, to slaughter women and children, to the West Bank to help crush women and children. So I think that the further that this goes on, Ansarullah is weakening the Israeli regime. It's weakening NATO because it's humiliating the United States, which is much more powerful than Israel. In a sense, what Hezbollah and Hamas and Jihad and all the others are doing, which are very much important, which are extraordinarily important, are somewhat different from what Ansarullah is doing. Ansarullah is fighting the superpower itself in order to protect Hamas and the Palestinian people and the resistance and Hezbollah and everyone who's fighting against the Israeli regime. They are fighting the United States, and they have won. They've won this war. So the longer this lasts, the worse it becomes for Israel. They're only making Ansarullah more popular. Remember, and this is something very sad, but it's a fact. When Ansarullah was fighting the genocidal war, or the Houthis as they call them in the West, when Ansarullah, and now it's the Yemeni government, because they are the Yemeni government, even though the West doesn't want to acknowledge it. When the Yemeni government was fighting the genocidal war backed by the West, even in the Arab world, there was very little sympathy for them. They were influenced by the narratives produced by the media controlled by dictatorships. These very same people now are the heroes of the Arab world. Many of the very same people who were looking down upon them, who frowned at them, who disliked them for all the wrong reasons, now they see them as heroes. So the longer this war lasts, the worse it gets for the Israeli regime, the better it becomes, the better it is, despite the horrific toll, the better it is for the resistance, because the resistance is becoming more popular across the region. Those who are cooperating with Israel are becoming more discredited, and the regime is becoming weaker.
People, in my opinion, have also to know that there is a major ideological and religious difference between the Ansarullah and Hamas. They are not the same. Many people in the West, they confuse, they don't know the differences among them. And even at some point when after the so-called Arab Spring, when Qatar and Saudi Arabia jumped into the wagon, at some point the political bureau of Hamas, they were not really even sympathizing with the Ansarullah fight with the Saudis. And I think the Saudis even tried to open channels with the political bureau of Hamas, Khalid Mish'al and the rest, to bring them on the side of Saudi Arabia in this conflict against Ansarullah. But this war, let's say the strategic existential war against the Palestinians, have crushed all the illusions in the minds of the Arabic population, which were instilled in their minds after the Arab Spring through the propaganda machine with hundreds of millions of budget per year by Al Jazeera Arabic, by Al Arabiya, by Al Hurra, by tens of TV outlets which spawned in the past decade or two in order to propagate and parrot these narratives. And I truly believe they were psychological operations, these TV channels, against the population. At one hand, they say, we support the Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian cause against Israel, and at the same time, they fight against the elements of strength of the Palestinians and those who support the Palestinians in their struggle against the occupation forces. It was easy to detect it, but despite that, many people fell into the trap. And now this Gaza onslaught, in my opinion, has revealed, and all the masks are off, dropped, and everybody can see everything with blank eye. Like, you don't need really a TV channel to tell you how to think and what to see. It's there. It's on social media. You can't really hide it. You can suppress some content, but if 1 million people are posting about it, you have to see it somehow because of the algorithm of TikTok and X and Instagram. It's impossible if you live in Germany or the United States and you're scrolling these reels. Even if you're sitting in your living room, you will see one of these footages coming from Gaza. So it's impossible now to hide the truth of what's happening in Palestine. But there is a question, Dr. Marandi. The critics of Iran, when they watched what the Ansarullah did in Tel Aviv, they struck Tel Aviv with this drone. They say that this was a message from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, to Israel and the United States, that despite leadership change in Tehran and a progressive president in power, nothing will change in Iran's grand strategy vis-à-vis its enemies. In fact, Iran may further escalate to its allies if necessary. Your take?
Well, a couple of things. One is that you're correct, and I think people in the Hamas leadership, they were actually, some of them were seeking Saudi Arabia more than the Saudis were seeking them. But I have to point out that the whole resistance in Palestine wasn't, they didn't have a single view. Islamic Jihad had a completely different view, and so did all the other smaller groups. But the resistance on the ground in Gaza, their position was very different from many of those people in the political wing. And ultimately, there was a change in the political wing. And I think, as you pointed out correctly, the events in Gaza and the fact that countries like Turkey and oil-rich so-called friends in the Persian Gulf did nothing for them, I think that opened their eyes to reality. And it's not just those media outlets that you alluded to. It's, you know, Sky, the Sky Channel that's controlled by the United Arab Emirates, Sky News Arabia. There's Al Hadath, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller media channels that directly and indirectly are a part of this media apparatus, and all of them are controlled by states or by actors close to the states. So it's sort of in the Arabic world is sort of like the West, in that you have a huge media apparatus in the West that creates this false image, that creates these narratives for ordinary people to keep them quiet. In the Arabic world, it's the same. It has been the same. But what we're seeing, as you rightly pointed out, is that in social media, things are seeping through. Even though social media is controlled, I've lost my Facebook account long ago. I don't have a Facebook account or an Instagram account. Both of them have been shut down. I'm pretty sure that my Twitter account is regularly shadow banned. But, and I think that's, and I know many people who've lost their accounts. I know many students of mine who have shut down their accounts because they're thinking, well, if I want to study abroad, they're going to go through my accounts and then they may not give me a visa, or I can't study, or so a lot of people carry out self-censorship too as a result. But as you rightly point out, it's so horrific that the news is getting through, and there are more and more alternative means to get the message out. So the Western media, or the media of these dictatorships in our region, pro-Western dictatorships, they're no longer able to control the narrative as they did before. But getting to your question, I would first say that the guards, and at the top, the Islamic Republic of Iran and the leader, their relationship with the resistance, the axis of resistance across the region, is one of friends and allies, regardless of what the West likes to think or likes to tell the rest of us. Hezbollah, Ansarullah, the different groups, Palestinian groups, like Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and the smaller groups, the Hashid, or the Popular Mobilization Forces or units, in Syria, the forces that exist, all of that exist there, all of these are allies, and none of them are proxies. So no one in Tehran tells Hamas what to do. No one in Tehran tells Hezbollah or Ansar what to do. But all of these groups are on the same page. They all have a belief that the Israeli regime is an ethno-supremacist regime, that is a Western colony that will never allow our region to live in peace. They're hostile to Christians and Druze and Muslims, and they're hostile to Jews that are opposed to Zionism, and that people, and that we have to assist the Palestinian people, the natives of the land, to defeat the colonizers, these these people who've come in from Europe and North America. So I would say that just as October the 7th was carried out by the resistance in Gaza because they were under siege in a concentration camp and they were punishing the occupier that surrounded them. Ansarullah's acts are of the same nature. But yes, Iran provided the resistance in Gaza with the capability to fight. The tunnels, the military capability, the ability to train their young people, whether it's in Gaza, whether it's in Yemen, because Yemen's assets are also all underground. That's why the Americans can't defeat them. They have high-tech capabilities, all of them well protected underground, something that they've learned to do during the war, the genocidal war that the Saudis and Emiratis carried out. The same is true with Hezbollah, although in the case of Hezbollah, they're much more, they've had more time to do this. They've started earlier. Hezbollah's capabilities are enormous.
Yes.
But right now, Hezbollah is fighting at a disadvantage because they don't want the whole of Lebanon to get involved. They want people in Lebanon to live in peace. So they're making sacrifices, extra sacrifices by fighting alongside the border. And so they're unable to use most of their capabilities and they're more vulnerable to giving martyrs. But Iran doesn't tell Hezbollah what to do either. So I think that the escalation that we're seeing is something in which there's a consensus. Yemen felt that we have to go to every now and then they go to a new phase to put more pressure on the Israelis because now it's almost 10 months and the genocide continues. So Hezbollah, the Hashid in Iraq, which is also carrying out attacks, very few people know that. But more importantly, what the Hashid or the Popular Mobilization Forces in Iraq are doing is that they're keeping the Americans in check. Because the Americans know that if they join the genocide openly, then their assets in Iraq will be gone. The green zone will no longer be green. The Americans will lose everything in Iraq. And so these different groups have their own views on how to carry out war. They're in constant dialogue with one another. They're all on the same page, but they make their own decisions. They make their own decisions. And that, I think, is the difference between the axis of resistance and Western military. When the West through Turkey was destroying Syria and through Jordan and Turkey, but mostly Turkey, these groups were proxies.
Yes.
Al-Qaeda or Hayat Tahrir Sham or Jaish al-Islam or Daesh or ISIS and all the other groups, they were proxies. They were told what to do. They received money and they did what but they didn't coordinate or they didn't have their own agency. They were subordinate to their outside controllers, just as right now in Idlib, they're controlled by Turkey, and still funding comes in from the Persian Gulf, and in the areas occupied by the United States, they're controlled by the Americans.
Yes, I agree with you that Iran's handling with its allies is based on not giving them instructions. However, Iran is enabling the capabilities of, Yemen. This type of drone and this type of strike was not possible without the Iranian direct support, and we know that the economic situation is dire also in Yemen. So there is also a part that the Iranians say it's a generosity from the Iranian side to give this type of weapon to Yemen. And then operating this drone needs training, and then you have the electronic part of it, the satellite part, the electronic warfare. This drone passed through the air defenses of Israel and struck in Tel Aviv and there was not a single whistle enabled in Tel Aviv. And then the Israelis said, oh, this was a human mistake. It wasn't a human mistake. I'm not stupid. I know. I've been following this type of attacks for a long time. There is an electronic warfare have been done previously before this drone penetrated the skies of Israel. So I see that Iran has a role in this, and Israel, therefore, they are trying to escalate now in Lebanon, the closest of their neighbors, because this is the most direct threat on the Israeli security. And last week, Israel crossed Israel's red line by bombarding civilian homes in southern Lebanon, killed many civilians. And this was, for the first time during the past 8 months, this was a direct provocation, no military goal there, just to kill civilians in southern Lebanon. And while Hezbollah vowed to retaliate, don't you think that the critics of Hezbollah have probably a point by saying that Israel is deliberately provoking Hezbollah to open an all-out war in the south, especially if we put it in the context that the next president in the United States is most likely going to be Trump, and his vice president is going to be most likely J.D. Vance. Both are hawks against Iran, against Hezbollah, and they want to find quote-unquote solution for Ukraine to refocus their energy on the Middle East and on Iran and also on China.
Well, there's something I forgot to point out, and that is that with the new president in Iran, you're correct, policy has not changed, and they have sent that message, not necessarily through this particular attack, because as I said, Yemen has agency, they are autonomous, they're allies, they're friends, they're comrades, but they're brothers and sisters, but they're not taking orders. But Iran's policy hasn't changed. In fact, I just retweeted this morning President Pezeshkian, where he said, or tweeted, or X, or whatever it's called, that the same people who unjustly impose sanctions on Iran are the same people who gave chemical weapons to Saddam Hussein in the 1980s to use against Iranians and Iraqis. But I don't remember the wording of the tweet, but I retweeted it. So Dr. Pezeshkian is not Rouhani, and he's on the same page when it comes to resistance. And in fact, I think that this further empowers Iran, because he comes from a tradition within the reformist camp that is more centrist and more pro-resistance. So in many ways, his foreign policy is very, very, very similar to Dr. Raisi, who is also centrist in the conservative or the principlist camp. And when I mean centrist, I don't mean centrist as in the Western tradition. I mean at the heart of Iranian politics, which is anti-hegemonic, anti-imperialist, and so on, and which believes in social justice and expanding the social welfare network. But I think that, therefore, in this regard, the Americans and the Europeans already know what's going to happen, and that they have to deal with someone who's going to stand firmly with the Palestinian people. With regards to Hezbollah, Hezbollah is in a very unique position, because as you alluded to, and I was also pointing out earlier, they want to keep Lebanon out of the war. So they are taking hits that they wouldn't have to if they fought the war in which they were trained to do, using their capabilities across Lebanon, which are huge. But they are calculating, they are responding in ways to hurt the Israeli regime. They've expanded, but in a calculated way. I think that while the chances are for an expanded war, and I don't mean an all-out war, have been pretty high, they've sort of receded over the last few days. But then again, it could go in reverse. We don't know. But the Israelis have many problems with Lebanon. They even if they provoke, even if the war expands in Lebanon, they will lose. And as I said, if the Americans become a part of the war, then the Americans will lose in Iraq, which will be horrific for U.S. Policy. When it comes to U.S. capability, when it comes to Trump, I think the world has changed, and I think you would agree that the world has changed immensely over the last 4 years. In fact, I think over the last year, the world has changed. The West is rapidly on the decline. The global economy is not doing well, but you are in Germany, if I'm not mistaken, at the moment. The economy in Germany is going downhill very fast. The West is, even though the rest of the world is, the whole of the world is suffering, the West is paying a huge price. You cannot fight endless wars without paying the consequences. And the war in Ukraine is the biggest of all those wars. And the occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan was dragging down the U.S. economy already back then. If you recall, Trump, in one of his campaign speeches when he was running for presidency in 2016, he said that we lost $7 trillion or $6 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan. So what's going on now, directly and indirectly, is far worse. And by the time he comes to power, assuming he becomes president, the situation is going to be even more difficult than now. And ending the war in Ukraine, it's not like, shutting a faucet or something like that. It's not, you just don't it's not like you turn off a light. Blood has been spilled. Many Russians have died. Many more Ukrainians have died. Hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent directly on this war, if not trillions. Indirectly, many trillions of dollars have been lost because of trade and businesses all suffering because of sanctions, because the war, the borders are closed. So Trump is going to have a very tough time turning things around because the Russians who've lost so much, they have expectations. The President Putin has to tell his people that your sacrifices had these results.
Yes.
On the other hand, the Europeans, if they give too much, if they're seen as giving too much with the Americans, it's humiliating for Trump. So I think Trump has a lot of problems that he'll have to deal with when it comes to Europe, even if there's a ceasefire, even if on day one there's a ceasefire, it's not going to end. The costs are going to continue to increase the burden on the West. And then there's China. And as the West declines, China, even though its economy is suffering, they're not waging wars. They are trying to move forward.
Even J.D. Vance says that China is building bridges and infrastructure, although he's a hawk against China, and he accepts this notion.
Whereas the United States is basically using the infrastructure that it had in the 1970s, when back then it was the world's China.
Yes.
So all their infrastructure is falling apart while China's so, and then the region has changed, and this is something that you know firsthand. We are not where we were even 4 years ago. This is not West Asia, North Africa, the West Asian North Africa that you and I knew, even during the end of the Trump presidency.
Yes.
So Hezbollah is much stronger. Israel is much weaker. American allies are much more vulnerable. Ansar Allah is, what is Trump going to do with Ansar Allah? What is he going to do with Iraq? What is he going to do with it? Is he going to engage in war with Iran? If he engages in war with Iran, that means the end of the global economy, because all those countries in the Persian Gulf region that host American troops or military installations or soldiers or bases, they will be targeted by Iran, and all of their key assets, all of their key infrastructure, their vital infrastructure is right in front of Iran. These are small regimes. In the case of Saudi Arabia, it's a desert for the most part. All their assets are right alongside the coast of the Persian Gulf. So then, of course, as I said, in Iraq, the Americans will lose everything. So Trump is not in a strong position at all, and he will be leading a very divided country. Half the country hates him, despises him, and half the country supports him, and some fools worship him. But I don't think that it's going to be easy for Trump. And as I said, Iran today has a president, and of course, Ayatollah Khamenei, the leader, and the political class that is determined to support the Palestinian people. During the Rouhani years, we were more vulnerable, but but now we're much stronger. Biden didn't change policy towards Iran. He continued with the maximum pressure sanctions, even though we had negotiations in Vienna. As you know, I was a part of those negotiations. Yes. We almost reached a deal, but Biden at the very end, he failed to take the last step. Joseph Borrell said that the Iranian demands are reasonable, and now let's see what the Americans do at the end of the negotiations, and so we can move on. And the Americans failed to take that last step. So Biden hasn't done Iran any favors whatsoever. He hasn't. The fact that Iran is selling its oil is because the world has moved on. Yeah. China and other countries are saying to themselves, and even India, that we cannot simply just obey the Americans. We have to move beyond the dollar, Western financial institutions, because then if they get their way, then they're going to expand these sanctions, and ultimately it's going to destroy us, meaning China. So with the new technologies, Western financial institutions and the US dollar are going to be less capable of controlling the world. And the West, by imposing these sanctions, have acted, these sanctions have acted as a catalyst to move this fast forward. In other words, if the Americans hadn't done this, we probably would still be thinking about using the US dollar like before, even though it benefits the Americans. So I don't see Trump in some Superman. I mean, for some fools in the United States who look at his picture and with so what they call that iconic picture and think of him as some sort of human, superhuman or Superman. The rest of the world knows what's going on. The guy dropped to the floor. I don't know if you've seen. I don't know if you've seen that clip where they compare him to Maduro.
Yeah.
And Maduro, when he was being shot at, he just
looking.
He was looking, he didn't move, and all his people were standing there, and his guards who went and stood in front of him with those protection shields.
Yeah.
He didn't even duck. Or when Ayatollah Khamenei was giving a speech, a Friday prayer speech, and they blew up a bomb in Iran. This was during the war. He didn't walk away. He stood his ground, and then he continued with it. He continued with his speech. So, and 14 people were martyred there, thanks to the Western-backed terrorists that are based across Europe right now. They carried out that attack. So, no, I don't see, and I'm sorry for these very long answers, but I don't see Trump as being more effective. In fact, I think Trump is worse for the empire than even this half-dead president that they have now.
Actually, I like to listen to long answers, especially from intellectual people like yourself, because I consider this also a learning path for me. So when I listen to your answers, I just want to add just last thing before we end up this show today, that Americans are so propagandized. Like they like to have this Rambo figure as a president now that he survived assassination and came out with the fist up, and then he has blood on his ears. This scene of this Rambo guy was going to come and save America again, and America will become glorious again. This doesn't how an empire restores its status. Usually when we read history and we see the curve and how empires start to fall, and the United States is now on the falling curve, they are delusional. They don't accept that they are on their power is diminishing. So they could go into some adventures as well, and this will be the straw that will break the back of the straw. You know. So I think we're at that stage. So if the rationality prevails in Washington, they will pick and choose isolation for some time. Restore their capacity, rebuild their country, and come back as a sane country. Or they have the option to open a new front somewhere in West Asia and get humiliated and this time humbled. But the end result will be the same. America cannot really rule the world forever, so it has to withdraw from this race. Dr. Marandi, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that.
One point that I'd like to add, and that is that the empire is collapsing immediately, rapidly, and I think it is imminent. The collapse of the dollar, the Americans are pushing for it. I'm not saying it will happen tomorrow or next week or next month, but we are moving in that direction. The way in which they're handling the economy and waging all these wars, this is not sustainable. And as they rush towards the cliff, the rest of the world is going to move on. And when the dollar collapses, when the empire collapses, the situation in the United States is going to be much worse than what it is today. And I think it will take generations if the American remains as it is, as this country that we know it today, if it remains as it is, while being so deep, because it's very deeply divided, it will take many decades for it to revive. But this is the problem that ordinary Americans have. They're propagandized. They've been taught to think of themselves as exceptional and superior. And whether it's not just Zionist Christians, for example, who are not Christian. I mean, anyone who supports the genocide in Gaza is no supporter of Christ.
They're takfiris. They're takfiris.
Yes, exactly.
They even tell me I'm not a real Christian.
You guys recall that since October 7th, you have about 17% of the Israeli workforce that haven't come back to work, meaning they're all on benefits. You've got also a lot of the Palestinians that they used to use as basically slave labor, who would cross over from Gaza every morning and then go back to Gaza every night, or also in the West Bank, in the occupied West Bank, have to go and through a million checkpoints. They've kidnapped many of them and tortured them. Some of them were in detention for months, and so those Palestinians are also not coming into work anymore because of the apartheid system and this paranoia that they have. So Israeli businesses are nosediving and plummeting, and especially small businesses. So since October 7, you have 46,000 Israeli businesses that have been forced to close. So they're not just in trouble, they have utterly and completely shut down. Okay? So this is according to an Israeli newspaper, and they refer to Israel as a country in collapse, and this is being reported again by Cradle. So they say this is a very high number that encompasses many sectors. About 77% of the businesses that have been closed since the beginning of the war, which make up about 35,000 businesses, are small businesses with up to 5 employees and are the most vulnerable in the economy. So that's according to one Israeli CEO who is being interviewed by the magazine. So the report also says that, quote, the most vulnerable industries are construction, and as a result, also the entire ecosystem.
Revolutionary salute to our brother Curtis Mitchell for the $9.99 donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. I absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute to you.
That operates around construction, meaning ceramics, air conditioning, aluminium, building materials, and more. All of these significantly damaged. The trade sector has also been severely affected. This includes the service sector and industries like fashion, furniture, warehousing, entertainment, transport, tourism. Israel is in a situation where there is, quote, almost no foreign tourism. Adding that damage to businesses is all over the country and almost no sector has been spared. This includes agricultural sector, right? So you've got primary sector, agriculture, industry, and then also services. So this includes agriculture, which is based mainly in the south and the north, both considered active combat zones due to the threat posed by the Palestinian resistance. So from the south, meaning from Gaza, and then the north, Galilee, or so near the Sea of Galilee and the Golan Heights, where it's Hezbollah. Yeah, and you remember a lot of Thais were kidnapped on October 7th, you remember? So the Israelis have a shortage of people, right? The colony doesn't function, so they have to import workers or slave labor from Thailand and pay them cheap to work for them in agriculture and farming. I mean, look, to be honest, many countries do that. You have also seasonal things, like in Canada, they want people to pick apples in summer or whatever. But, you know, what I was saying before about Palestinians especially is absolutely true. They use them like slave labor. In any case, the agricultural sector is impacted because of the combat zones. And in addition to that, the total figure that they're saying is 60,000 Israeli businesses expected to shut down by the end of 2024. I mean, honestly, if you ask me, given the rate at which this is happening, I think it's going to be much more. You have to remember that you have Israelis leaving the colony entirely. You've got 500,000 at least who left by October, November. I think that was Times of Israel that reported that. That was 6 months ago, right? More than 6 months ago, 500,000 had left. I mean, Christ, it took the Algerians quite a while to kick out that many French. I can tell you, you had like 100,000 that left 1 month, and the next 200,000, 500,000 in one fell swoop. Wow. I mean, talk about decolonization. My goodness. It goes to show you how easily they can leave and bring peace to the region by not stealing people's houses. They have that possibility. Palestinians got nowhere to go. You know why? Because they're Palestinian. They're not Polish. They're not Scottish. They're not Australian. They're not American. They're Palestinian. They come from Palestine and Palestine only. But, you know, the Israelis want to kick them out no matter what. And now they're being given a taste of their own medicine. Hezbollah's attacks have severely affected local business and education in the north. Tens of thousands of settlers have been forced to evacuate. I mean, again, that figure is very conservative. If you ask the Israelis, they'll tell you 80,000. The UN says 90,000, I think, or close to 100,000. I think the figure, if you ask me, and based on my reading, although, again, I don't have the exact source for you now, but the figure I have in my head was 300,000, and that's from a few months ago. And I think now, especially with Kiryat Shimona and all this talk about, oh, my God, there's going to be a war with Lebanon, it's even more. Yeah. I mean, just 2 days ago, Hezbollah launched the biggest drones or aerial attack that they've ever launched against Israelis in the north. So they're evacuating more and more people, and because of these fires that are bursting out and popping up everywhere. They're uncontrollable fires. You have thousands of acres that are just burning to a crisp, and they can't put the fires out. So I expect it's more that are displaced. Again, these are not people that have left entirely, but they're displaced. So they've been put in hotels somewhere, you know, towards the south or south of the Galilee. Hezbollah's leader, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, said just 4 days ago on the 10th of July, quote, "Our goal of draining the enemy's economy has been achieved." This is another domain that people don't think about. You know, I mean, I've always raised it to you because I think it's so significant and substantial, because, you know, you can't have a colony functioning or any ecosystem functioning without the economy. It's the primary, I mean, it's the quintessential issue. It's the priority. You can't build an army without an economy. You can't have a public sector and civil service without an economy. You can't have anything without an economy. It's the basis upon which everything else is built, right? So if the colony's economy breaks down, I mean, it's a jackpot, bingo, you know, and they have been achieving that. And this is just a further indication of Israel's impending doom and crumbling. They're fleeing the colony entirely. They're displaced internally. The military sucks in Gaza. It sucks in the north. It can't stop the threats incoming barrages from Iran when they happen. It can't do anything. It's a complete failure. And the Yemenis, we have to give them credit too, because remember, they've not only been choking the most southern port. Again, I'll pull up the map. I'll use it as a good opportunity to pull up a map. What is the Israelis' most southern port? It's Eilat, or as it's known in Arabic before they changed the name, like everything else in Palestine, Rashrash. So it's right here on the Red Sea. Okay, and it's the last. So it's on the way. It's on the way to the Suez Canal. Okay, now the Yemenis, because Egypt are controlled by Israel and the United States and are not closing the Suez Canal, the only other option to choke traffic between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea is obviously here at the other closest point, which is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Okay, this is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait between Yemen and the Horn of Africa. And of course, Yemen sits at the most strategic place of any, body. Land strip in a body of water. It's situated between the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, the Arabian Sea. If you go, if you just sail up the coast, now you're in Oman, of course, not Yemen, but if you just sail up there, you've got the Strait of Hormuz and of course the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. It's utterly amazing. So they just decided to close the flow of traffic down here instead of up there, and they've achieved the exact same thing as in 1956. Okay, so what they've done is no more ships come to Rashash or to Eilat. You can't get there. I mean, you can maybe come in from the Suez Canal, but what are you doing? You can't do anything if your traffic is meant to come from the other side, which is where a lot of the traffic from China, from all of the tigers and economic hubs in Asia, it's all coming this way. It's not coming the other way, right? It has to get from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, not from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. So you cut off traffic, you cut off supplies that the Israelis desperately need, and now they have to go all the way around Africa, and you've cost them time and money. So you're destroying their economy bit by bit just by diverting or cutting off the flow of maritime traffic through this very, very narrow and quite dangerous, actually, strait, which is very, very tight for navigation, right? So in any case, they've done that, and in addition, Yemen and Iraq together are striking the other ports in the Mediterranean. So there's no way to get around this. Even if you would sail around Africa and come back through the Gibraltar Strait and then into the Mediterranean, you're still screwed because Haifa is being struck. Ashdod down here is also being struck. Okay, this is one of their other ports, their other major ports. So all of the three major ones are being hit. Even the airport, Ben Gurion getting hit sometimes. So they're doing these together, both Yemen and Iraq, sending their own drones. And again, it's remarkable the distance that they're traveling. Never mind that they're actually hitting also the targets accurately. It's absolutely incredible, this era that we've come into militarily and strategically. I mean, if you would have told me this a few years ago, I just wouldn't believe you. I wouldn't believe you that these non-state actors would be choking off Israel's economy, or rather its maritime traffic, and thereby its economy. It's really amazing. And this is the solution when you have sellouts controlling Egypt and controlling Morocco, who refuse to close the Suez Canal and the Strait of Gibraltar, respectively. You manage another way, right? And this is how they're doing it. So just go back to the article. The Yemeni army's maritime operations have also contributed to the economy's downfall. Revenues at key ports, such as the southern port of Eilat, have fallen significantly, as I was saying. In the final months of 2023, the Israeli gross domestic product plummeted by nearly 20%. Jesus Christ. I mean, that is magnificent, really. They destroyed Syria's economy. They destroyed Palestine. The Israelis and Americans have done this to so many people, and to see them get a taste of their medicine is so... The threat of escalation with Hezbollah has also posed fears in Israel that any full-scale war with the Lebanese resistance will plunge the economy much deeper into the abyss. Hezbollah have demonstrated through recent video warnings that that they are capable of attacking energy infrastructure, such as oil refineries and gas tanks. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's what the message was when they released that 10-minute video, the part one we were looking at a few weeks ago, where they had 10 minutes of surveillance footage, nothing but surveillance footage, just to send the message that we can fly above your Haifa ports, your airstrips, your petrochemical storage facilities, and you won't even know that we're there. And if we can film from up there, we can bomb you from up there, and you're not going to even know about it till it happens. That's what the message was, okay? And the same thing, they released part two now with the Golan Heights. Like, you have this strategic base at the top of Jebel el-Sheikh in the Golan Heights. It's not so protected and as secure right up there as you think it is. We can get to you up there as well. And we know every position of every facility, every radar station, all of it. All of the missile salvos, we've got it all on tape. Here it is for the whole world to see. So, but again, that's more focused on intelligence. I mean, just economically, man, what an achievement. I mean, you know, the Americans, like I said, the Americans and Israelis, they love sanctioning people and ripping their economies apart in Venezuela and Iran and everywhere. And now they get a taste of the medicine. It's karma. What do you want me to say? It's karma. And even then, it's not enough. It doesn't even come close. But really, this is why the Arabs, which I was saying in the documentary series that I made, the Arabs could control everything if they would team up. And I think that's been a strategic effort by the West. And they make no secret of it. It's not like, you know, I'm coming up with this myself. They have said this, you know, that they want to create like tiny enclaves across the Arab world, and that's what Israel is. That's what Lebanon is. It's like, oh, let's have a Christian country, an Arab Christian country here. We'll put the Jews over here. We'll put, you know, the Shias over here. Let's carve people up into like segregated sectarian communities, so that the Arab world is, instead of being connected from one end, from Oman to Morocco, as one body, which it is geographically and culturally and linguistically, now it's a bunch of, you know, different colonies and client states, and it's you know, divide and conquer, essentially. It's divide and conquer. And so this is, you know, just look at what Yemen are doing, what they're doing by cutting off the flow of traffic. This is what the Arabs could achieve threefold or fourfold if they would just cooperate. I mean, like I said, you've got the Strait of Gibraltar over here. You can cut off maritime traffic that way. You've got the Suez Canal over here. You can cut off traffic here as well. You've got the Bab el-Mandeb Strait down here, which the Yemenis have now sanctioned, and you've got the Strait of Hormuz over here. So, I mean, all of the strategic maritime, pressure points pass through Arab countries, every single one of them. I mean, okay, the Panama Canal is also important, but we're not talking about that. And even then, it doesn't compare to the Suez Canal. I mean, it's not even, you know, the amount of traffic is much more important and higher throughout the Mediterranean and Red Sea and the Persian Gulf than it is anywhere else in the world. It's always been that way. So the fact that Yemen are able to cut off not just the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, but even the goddamn Indian Ocean. I mean, what times are we living in? It's truly unprecedented in every single way. And at this point, we're not even talking about the Palestinian resistance anymore. We're talking about the Yemenis, right, who have just come out of a war, by Saudi Arabia, by the UAE. And how did that war come to an end? Do you all remember? It stopped. It really stopped when the Yemenis started bringing the war to the UAE's doorstep and Saudi Arabia's doorstep. Okay, and it wasn't too long ago. They fired drones at Aramco, at the largest Saudi oil company, set their fields ablaze during the Formula One race. What an embarrassment. And then they hit the UAE thousands of kilometers away, right? I mean, just a little over 1,000, right? So if you take the most conservative distance, because again, the Ansar Allah are not over here. They're in the areas of Sana'a, okay? So from here all the way to the UAE, I mean, we're looking at, 1,300 kilometers, right? That's unbelievable. And when they did that, and it was all the way in Dubai that they struck, right? So well over 1,000 kilometers. And sorry, it created a bunch of points here. I don't know why. But the point is, they started taking the war to their doorstep with this advanced weaponry, which they're using now against Israel. And then they learned their lesson and they cut the ball. So you see, it's been a long road to get here. It's taken a lot of time to get their stuff together, but they understand the tactics that need to be used and the long-term strategy, which is choke off the oil fields when it comes to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, prevent them from making money and casually getting a buy while, you know, Yemen is bombed. And when it comes to the Israelis, destroy their economy, cut off the ports, and prevent them from receiving traffic. And for the America and the UK as well, if they're going to bomb Yemen, no more ships passing through here. You know, action, reaction. That's the only way they learn. That's the only way they learn.
Again, YouTube demonetized my channel.
The International Court of Justice issued a landmark ruling, declaring Israel's ongoing presence in the occupied Palestinian territories as unlawful. The court has called for the immediate end to this presence, marking a significant moment in the Palestinian struggle for justice.
We're not
Palestinian
talking about this
officials
in
have
the news.
celebrated the decision, viewing it as a crucial step in their long-standing fight. On the other hand, Israel condemned the ruling, with the United States, its key ally, also criticizing the judgment after an initial period of silence. The advisory opinion, while non-binding, asserts that Israel has no sovereignty over the occupied territories and has breached international laws prohibiting the acquisition of land by force. It also emphasizes that nations must not aid in sustaining Israel's occupation. Here's how the world is reacting to the verdict. In the United States,
Now, meaning everything that the U.S. is doing is illegal by shipping any weapons to an illegal occupying army. Also meaning the Palestinians can do whatever they have to get the occupying army off of their territory. This is why I tell you that Kamala Harris, Joe Biden BS is a distraction, because so much is going on that they got to keep you from knowing about it. It absolutely, they just ruled Israel is an occupying force that must be stopped.
President Joe Biden's administration expressed concerns that the court's broad opinion might complicate efforts towards a two-state solution, despite acknowledging the
Ain't no two-state
inconsistency of
solution.
Israeli settlements with international law. The United Kingdom, under its new Labour government, has stated that it respects the ICJ's independence and is currently evaluating its response, while maintaining its opposition to illegal settlements and settler violence. South Africa welcomed the ruling, reaffirming its stance that Israel's occupation remains unlawful and calling for all states to end their complicity in these actions. Turkey urged the international community to firmly address Israel's illegal practices, while Saudi Arabia highlighted the need for credible steps towards a comprehensive resolution to the Palestinian issue. Qatar endorsed the ruling, underscoring its commitment to the Palestinian cause and the necessity of respecting international law. Jordan demanded an end to Israel's impunity and accountability for alleged war crimes. Egypt called for immediate action to end the occupation and settlement expansion, urging international support for Palestinian self-determination. The United Arab Emirates, which established ties with Israel in 2020, welcomed the ruling and rejected measures altering the status of occupied territories. Bahrain supported the ICJ's findings, advocating for Palestinian self-determination and an independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital. Kuwait urged the international community to fulfill its duties in supporting the establishment of an independent Palestinian state and halting aggression against Gaza. Pakistan praised the ruling as a validation of the Palestinian struggle, calling for its implementation and reaffirming its commitment to the Palestinian cause. In Europe, Ireland's Foreign Minister Michael Martin plans to work with the EU and UN to leverage the ruling for ending Israel's illegal presence. Australia's government is carefully reviewing the ruling, respecting the ICJ's role while urging Israel to cease settlement expansion. Bolivia called on the UN to take measures against crimes in Gaza and to ensure Palestine's right to self-determination, while Brazil emphasized the need for a two-state solution within the 1967 borders. Belgium and Iceland voiced strong support for international law, urging Israel to halt violations. Liechtenstein and Norway stressed the importance of the ruling in settling international disputes and ensuring self-determination. Spain urged the UN and international community to adopt measures based on the ICJ's findings. Slovenia called for Israel to adhere to its international obligations, while Algeria highlighted the ruling's role in addressing Israel's expansionist policies. Indonesia and Malaysia both hailed the ruling, with calls for the international community to compel Israel to comply and end its occupation.
Both Israel and Palestine have reacted pretty strongly to the 19th of July order of the International Court of Justice, the United Nations top court, which is called the Israeli illegal settlements on Palestinian lands as being tantamount to annexation, and also the exploitation of natural resources of the Palestinian territories by Israel is a clear breach of international law. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has called the ruling a decision of lies. Netanyahu claims, and I quote, "The Jewish people are not occupiers in their own land, not in our eternal capital Jerusalem, nor in our ancestral heritage of Judea and Samaria." No decision of lies in The Hague will distort this historical truth, and similarly, the legality of Israeli settlements in all parts of our homeland cannot be disputed.
Talking about their historical land.
Israel's foreign ministry has rejected the opinion as fundamentally wrong and one-sided, and has repeated its stance that a political settlement in the region can only be reached by negotiations. On the other hand, the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has welcomed the decision of the International Court of Justice and has called it historic. In a statement released by the Office of the President, Mahmoud Abbas has said that Palestine considers the decision of the United Nations Top Court a clear victory for justice. The statement reads, and I quote, "The presidency demands that Israel should be compelled to implement it. That means to vacate the territories that it occupies illegally with its illegal settlements that are built on Palestinian territories." The Palestinian Foreign Ministry has urged the states to uphold their clear obligations. Foreign Minister Riyad Maliki said, and I quote him here, "No aid, no assistance, no complicity, no money, no trade, no nothing, no action of any kind to support Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian territories." The advisory opinion by the ICJ is not binding, but it carries an enormous amount of weight under international law, and it would weaken support for Israel as it continues to fight a war in the Gaza Strip, where more than 38,000 Palestinians have been killed. Now, the Palestinians have also said that they support the order that calls for an immediate international action to end the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories. In a statement, the group said that the order puts the international system before the imperative of immediate action to end the occupation. The case predates the current war that is ongoing in the Gaza Strip and stems from a 2022 request from the United Nations General Assembly that it asked the court to look into the legal consequences of Israel's prolonged occupation, settlement, and annexation of the Palestinian territories. And what is interesting to note is that Israel did not even send a legal team for these hearings. For all
right now in Lebanon, Shia, Sunni, Christians, all united to fight Israel if Israel decides to go after Hezbollah. How do you find the situation right now in Gaza?
First of all, let me get the smile off my face. I'm smiling because of the failure of the Israeli enterprise and everything that Israel stands for. It's a glorious moment. I used to love Israel, traveled there frequently, loved the Israeli people. I don't anymore. I actually am at the point where I no longer sympathize for them or empathize. Israel is a force of evil, and it cannot exist. It's literally a cancer in the Middle East, and if it continues to exist, it will destroy the entire edifice. That's not anti-Semitic. It's not anti-Jewish. It's anti-Israel, the concept of a greater Israel. So when Israel has, for the last remember, Hezbollah only exists because Israel invaded southern Lebanon in 1982. It's a resistance organization. It exists to resist Israel. Israel still occupies parts of southern Lebanon, the Sheba farms. I know Israel put forward some nonsense about it belongs to Syria, and they have documents, It's Lebanon. Israel knows it's Lebanon. And so Hezbollah continues to exist. Israel has tried to isolate Hezbollah as just a militia, an illegal armed group that needs to be done away with. Hezbollah, on the other hand, has become a political party that has become part of the Lebanese government, a major part of the Lebanese government, very successful. And Hezbollah is well thought of. I mean, there's a lot of corruption in Lebanon, a lot of political parties don't have the trust and confidence of the Lebanese people. It says something when Hezbollah does have the trust and confidence, even amongst those segments of society, the Christians in particular, the Sunnis, that might otherwise be inclined to be opposed to Hezbollah because of sectarian reasons. Hezbollah has become synonymous with Lebanon. And so when Israel now says they want to destroy Hezbollah, Lebanon realizes what Israel is saying is we are going to destroy Lebanon. And Lebanon has made a decision that it's not going to go gently into that good night, that they will fight side by side with Hezbollah. That's why I smiled, because I love it when evil is defeated. And this is the defeat of evil. Israel is an evil institution. There's nothing good that comes out of Israel. It stands for nothing positive. It's an illegal occupation regime that has brought death and destruction to the region. The only good that's come out of Israel is the good that it does for itself, the self-promotion of a perversion of the Jewish cause through Zionistic institutions that have nothing to do with promoting Judaism, everything to do with opposing or oppressing the indigenous Arab population of the region, the Palestinian people. Gaza is just a horrific tragedy. Daily, on a daily basis, we're reminded of the evil that Israel does and what it's doing. And by extension, again, when I say evil, understand that because Israel is literally an extension of America, this is the evil of America as well. Sorry to say that to my fellow citizens, but if we promote Israel, we promote Zionism, we're promoting evil. And therefore we are evil ourselves. It's a disease that's infected everybody. It's infected the Republican Party, it's infected the Democratic Party, it's infected MAGA, it's infected independents. I mean, we have a handful of people, Jill Stein, Cornel West, who have articulated, but they're in a distinct minority in the United States. The majority of Americans tend to support what's going on. They support the continued existence of Israel without understanding or able to articulate what Israel is. Yes, we're horrified by the imagery that comes out of Gaza. But when you support Israel, you then support the notion that the Israelis are a superior race, a superior people, that the Palestinians are somehow inherently inferior. And now you're buying into the notion of human animals, which is what Israel uses to describe, terms Israel uses to describe the Palestinian people, human animals. And when they're human animals, I mean, yes, I cry when I my God, I don't want to look at cows being butchered, but I still go to McDonald's and eat their damn burgers. I'll still buy a steak, I just pretend the evil doesn't exist, but at the end of the day, I mollify myself by saying they're just cows. That's God's greater plan. They're put on earth to feed me. And the second you stop viewing the Palestinians as anything other than humans with the same rights as everybody else, you're literally relegating them to be cows, to be slaughtered. And that's what's happening. This is pure butchery. I mean, Gaza has become a butcher shop. When you see what they've done to those children, not just the death of the children, but the physical mutilation of their bodies, the slaughter of entire families, and the fact that it continues on a daily basis on the scope and scale that it does shows a gross indifference to human life, not just by Israel. I've already categorized them as evil. They are evil. Israel must be annihilated, eliminated as a nation state. It has no right to exist. It's lost that right. If it ever had it, it lost it a long time ago. But the American people, we let Nikki Haley go and sign artillery shells, encouraging the Israelis to finish the job. That's like telling Adolf Hitler, fire up the crematoriums, finish the job, get the trains running faster, baby, finish the job. Telling Andrew Jackson, don't let them go on the Trail of Tears, man. Kill them all. Don't let them go to Oklahoma. Wipe them all out, baby. We don't need those American Indians. They're not humans. They're animals, human animals. Human animals. And that's what the Palestinians have become in the minds of everybody, because we're just simply watching the slaughter of an entire people. Now, this is where it gets controversial, and I get in a lot of trouble when I say this, but it's a necessary slaughter. And I don't mean that because I view them as human animals. I view them as martyrs, as people who, had this conflict not taken place the way it has, wouldn't achieve the potential outcome that appears to be, on the horizon. The actual formation of a Palestinian homeland, a Palestinian state. It was never going to come free. It was never going to come easy. There was always going to be a horrific cost, because you can't have a Palestinian state and a Zionist Israeli entity peacefully coexisting. It's impossible. A two-state solution is impossible, especially now. It's impossible. Israel is incompatible with the vision of a Palestinian state, so Israel must be eradicated, eliminated, removed. That can't happen without dramatic transformations of opinions, political, just tectonic shifting of political, emphasis. And that can't happen unless the entire world was shocked by Israeli atrocities. You can't prove the point of Israel being a genocidal state unless Israel commits genocide, actual genocide. And this is the genius of Hamas. I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I mean, Charles de Gaulle signed off on the D-Day landings knowing that tens of thousands, perhaps even more than 100,000 French would die as a result, because you can't liberate France from Nazi occupation without a military conflict that takes out the trains, takes out the potential deploying areas, and civilians live there, and the civilians were going to be killed in large numbers. And de Gaulle signed off on it. Is he evil? No. It's just the reality that he had to operate in. But this is why de Gaulle never celebrated the D-Day anniversary, because to him, it wasn't about the liberation of France. To him, it was him signing off on the death of the French people he was supposed to protect. Hamas knew what it was doing on October 7th. I've called it the greatest military operation in modern history, the greatest raid in modern history. War is an extension of politics by other means, meaning that what they initiated on October 7th was far more than just a successful military operation. It started in motion these tragic events that will culminate in the creation of a Palestinian state. Without October 7th, we wouldn't be talking about the creation of a Palestinian state, not in a viable way, not in a way that has the world resonating, reflective of this. Without the sacrifice of the Palestinian people, we wouldn't be talking about this. If Israel had launched a bloodless campaign, a punitive campaign that simply focused on Hamas, the world wouldn't be acting the way they did, but that Israel's incapable of doing that. And that's the genius of Hamas, because they knew exactly what Israel was going to do. They anticipated it, every aspect of it. Hamas knows Israel. Shinwar knows the Israelis. He was in their damn prison camps. He knows how they think. He knows by capturing these hostages, these prisoners of war, and bringing them back in, what it would do to Israeli society, to create fractures within Israel, to get Israelis to attack Israelis. He understood that the Israeli army was incapable of managing a conflict as complex as what they faced in Gaza, fighting a war on above ground and below ground at the same time. They can't do. And he knew that Israel didn't have the capacity to absorb the damage that was being inflicted on it long term by Hamas. Israel today admits it's running out of tanks. Israel's running out of tanks. Why? Because Hamas is destroying and damaging them. Hamas understood this. They have the plan, the wherewithal, the sustainability factor. Israel's running out of spare parts. Israel's running out of men that are willing to fight. Israel's been strategically defeated by Hamas. And this is the precondition for the path towards a Palestinian state. Now understand, this path will be convoluted. It's going to be complicated. It's not going to be easy. It may start out as a two-state solution. I personally believe it will be. But I think Hamas is smart enough to know that they have created fatal damage to Israel, that a two-state solution is predicated upon A, a viable Palestinian state, and B, a viable Israeli state. There is no such thing as a viable Israeli state anymore. One, economically, Israel can't survive. You can thank Ansarallah for that, the Houthi, Yemen. They've launched the greatest economic blockade against the state that's ever been undertaken because it worked. They're not able to run this blockade. The U.S. Navy was defeated by the Houthi, defeated, because they can't stop it. They're still hitting ships. Southern port of Israel, non-functioning, bankruptcy. Israel itself is a bankrupt nation. The economy is flailing, will never recover. And if the economy doesn't recover, then the land of milk and honey doesn't exist. And that's the only damn thing that brought the Zionists in. Understand, the Zionists aren't religious. They're not religious. They're there to steal the land of the Palestinians and live in prosperity on land they didn't own, land they stole. They're living there. If you don't have an Israel where people can wake up in the morning and have a barbecue and then go to the beach and do all the stuff that secular people do, because it's not a religious state. They have religious people there, but that's not what Israel's about. It's about living comfortably off of the labor and the land that you stole from others. That's the whole premise of Israel. That's it. That's it. And when you remove that, when they're going to live under the perpetual fear of retaliation if Israel tries to flex its muscles again, people flee. We've seen 500,000 flee already. Israel's a small state. What, 9 million now? What happens when 4 million flee? What happens when 7 million flee? What happens when nobody wants to live in Israel anymore because the Zionist dream is over? And you know what else is going to break? In order to get that two-state solution, this is why I encourage people out there, don't be against the two-state solution, because it's a suicide pill for Israel. The two-state solution will require Israel to undo the West Bank settlements, the outright thievery that's taken place, to begin dismantling that. And then they break the back of the Brooklyn Jews. And that's one of the great sinners of evil in Israel today, the Brooklyn Jews, American Jews, who went over there and stole the land of the Palestinians because they can, because Zionism empowers them to do that. Break the back of the Brooklyn Jews, send them back to Brooklyn. And when you do that, Israel will fall in amongst itself. There will be a quasi-civil war. There'll be a minimum civil unrest. Israel will devolve societally, and more Israelis will flee. And at some point in time, the Palestinian state won't have to do any work, because Israel will cease to exist and the Palestinian state will expand. And now you have a singular entity where, if the Palestinians are smart, they allow Jews to live side by side in peace. There's no revenge. You can have a reconciliation committee if you want to. But the bottom line is, let Christians and Jews thrive. That's the future of Palestine. And that's a future that now is conceivable because of what Hamas did. Israel defeated itself, and it's a good thing. I would also tell the American people, look at what happened to Israel. Look what happens when you have a society that's defined by conflict, society that can only exist by oppressing others. That's America. That's how we interface with the world. That's our future if we don't change our ways. Because Israel is America. Zionism is American hegemony under a different name. The same underlying principles, where we treat the world as our oyster, where the people that live in the world are pawns to be moved around. They're not human. They're not us. They're not American. American exceptionalism posits the notion that Americans are above everybody else. We're the indispensable people. We're the indispensable nation. Therefore, by definition, everybody else is dispensable. Human animals that can be eliminated, manipulated, destroyed, killed at will, as long as it benefits the American enterprise. We are the living personification of Zionism, just using different terms. Manifest destiny. There's no difference between manifest destiny and the Zionist principles. We take what isn't ours by force because God wills it. That's where we are today. If we don't change our way as Americans, how we interface with the world, inevitably our outcome will be that of what is Israel's inevitable outcome.
Yeah.
They're gone.
With the current phase of their army, Scott, with the current situation, as you mentioned, of their army, if they go to Lebanon, to southern Lebanon, what do they face against Hezbollah?
Death and destruction. Hezbollah's going to wipe them off the planet. It's going to be a bad fight. Again, we talked earlier about the Russians and Ukrainians. You know, just because Russia's winning doesn't mean that Ukraine can't do harm to Russia. Of course, Ukraine can. Just because I say that Hezbollah is going to win doesn't mean that Israel isn't going to do great harm to Hezbollah and Lebanon. Israel will, of course. But this is an existential fight. It's a fight that Israel will initiate with the understanding that it is all or nothing. And therefore, Hezbollah and now Lebanon has to respond with the same way. It's a war of attrition where both sides are going to be trying to achieve attritional supremacy. That's the equivalent of firepower supremacy in standard combat. If you and I are fighting, you got 15 guys, I got 15 guys, and we start opening fire on each other, in theory, if we both stand our ground and have well-aimed fire, we'll kill each other. All right. But human nature kicks in at some point in time. And one of us is going to blink first. One of us is going to say, I'm going down. I want to live. The second they do that, you're no longer threatening me with death. And now I own you. I've got some firepower superiority over you. You're suppressed. If I can suppress all of you, I get firepower supremacy. That means now that I can dictate maneuver and outcomes. So Israel and Hezbollah are going to start off by pounding each other with everything they have. There will be no limits in the initial phases. It's going to be death and destruction like you've never seen before, awful, horrible. And then what will happen is somebody's going to blink. Israel's going to blink because Hezbollah isn't going to let the fight take place south of the Litani River. Hezbollah is going to take the fight into northern Israel, into the Galilee. Israel will be called upon to deliver death and destruction to Israeli towns, to Israeli villages, to kill Israeli people. It'll be the Hannibal directive writ large, which Israel can't politically sustain. So Israel will blink. Hezbollah won't blink. Hezbollah can't blink now because they have the support of all the Lebanese people. You know, Hezbollah doesn't have to worry about the political consequences because the Lebanese people understand what's at stake here. And so Hezbollah will then have achieved firepower superiority, and then they will continue to suppress, inflict harm. Israel will not be able to respond effectively once its airfields are suppressed. That means more firepower can be brought there. The Iron Dome will be eliminated or depleted, more firepower with more precision, and Israel will rapidly devolve, and it'll be the physical destruction of Israel. That's what Israel will get if it goes to war against Hezbollah. It's simple military math. When in the lead up to the Gulf War in October 1990, I was put in charge of a war games cell at the Warfighting Center in Quantico. Major General Caulfield ran it, and my job was to run scenarios for the Marine attack against the Iraqi defensive lines. Schwarzkopf had the Marines attacking a certain sector, and General Walt Boomer wasn't happy. And so he went to Caulfield and said, could you help us find the right place to attack? This required me to build a computer model of the Iraqi defenses, populate it, and then run simulations of the Marines attacking. And you do that by, you have to get down into the brass tacks, morale factors, ammunition depletion, communications capabilities, etc. And you run the model. And I ran that model nonstop from October until early December, trying to come up with the best location and the best forces. And yes, it's computerized, but after you do it after a while, your brain starts to work like the computer. And you start to be able to predict outcomes. You can sit there and say, if we get it to this, that, and the other thing, this is probably what's going to happen because I've seen what has happened in the past. And so my brain's been conditioned to plug in a whole bunch of military factors and just sit there and blink it through and go, yeah, I see the correlation of forces. I see the attritional factors, and I see what's likely to happen. Now, there's the human factor that's impossible to quantify, and that's always a reality there. But you offset that by, focusing on things that will have an impact on human, like command and control communications is important. If you block communications, you can't command and control. That inevitably leads to a deterioration of combat capacity. And that's what I've done with Israel and Hezbollah. So if people are out there going, how can you possibly? I'm just telling you guys right now that I have actually spent many hours laying out the force structures. I've populated it with data that is weighted to take into account experience, logistics, command and control, etc. And when I run that computer model in my head, Hezbollah wins every single time. But here's the other thing that people, that I should tell people. Israel ran 2 consecutive exercises in 2022 and 2023 where they tested a similar conflict notion. Basically, it was, what if everybody attacks Israel at once? But the main theater of operations for Israel was in northern Israel, southern Lebanon, against Hezbollah. Israel lost every time. Israelis know it too. It's just the way you can't, if you're being honest, you can't fake the data. And the data has Israel losing every single time.
I'm in northern Italy. Scott, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. We both thought that I would be off last week and this week, but historic events require that we comment on them. A week after the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, what are your thoughts as an ex-Marine, as a person trained in the use of all sorts of firearms? Could this young man have possibly pulled this off on his own? Would the skills necessary to do this be ones of somebody as to whom there's very little record of training or practicing?
I mean, the answer to that is highly unlikely. Let me preface my comments by just making it clear to people. While I was an intelligence officer and I had peripheral contact with personal security details, including the Secret Service protection protocols and procedures that are used at the United Nations during the General Assembly, I am not a Secret Service agent. Personal protective security is not my specialty. So I'm like you. I'm an outsider, looking at this. But I am a professional analyst, and I am able to break problems down into their component parts. And
you were in the Marine Corps and trained to use these weapons.
I was in the Marine Corps and I was trained to use the weapons, and I have some familiarity with sniping. So I'm not totally ignorant on this. I just don't want people to think that I'm, some former Secret Service. I'm not.
Okay.
But when you look at probability, the Secret Service is designed from the ground up. When you talk about personal protective details, to prevent this kind of thing from happening. So one would imagine that if you have a Secret Service that wasn't born yesterday, it's been around for a long time, it's experienced assassination attempts, it should be fine-tuned to this, operating in an environment where, in addition to domestic, the heightened domestic threat, the fact that political violence is a reality in America, you overlay that with, intelligence of potential foreign threats to the president and former president. The Secret Service should be as forward-leaning and effective as one could possibly imagine. Then you compare and contrast that with the shooter, who lacks the training, lacks the expertise, it doesn't fit the profile. So you compare and contrast the most qualified personal protection service organization in the world with the least potentially qualified assassin in the world, and this guy pulled off a successful assassination. If it weren't for however you want to call it, divine providence or just sheer luck, the tilt of the head, he would have killed his target. It would have been a successful assassination. The odds of this happening, Vegas odds makers wouldn't. You can't calculate because it's impossible. It's literally impossible. And so we have to degrade the Secret Service and we have to enhance the shooter. And it appears that we see evidence of that. We see, just rookie mistakes on the part of the Secret Service. And then the question is, are these intentional or, deliberate, or is it just incompetence? And we have to factor our modify our answer, or at least regulate our answer about incompetence by saying that the Secret Service by design is supposed to be immune to incompetence, that it has a level of professionalism attached to it that precludes incompetence, because the moment you exhibit any incompetence, less than perfect attention to detail, you're removed. They don't tolerate mistakes. And yet they made nothing but mistakes here. And so one has to legitimately ask, were these mistakes deliberate in nature? And the same thing with the shooter. How does he fly a drone? There's reports that he flew a drone. Why does he have 3 phones with encrypted channels, including channels talking to overseas people? How did he get to the roof? How did he get the ladder? How did he get the weapon up there? How did he know to bear crawl? How did he understand the layout of the land so that he could mask his movement up to the point where he took the shot? Because everything that I just described, how did he have a vehicle full of explosives that was rigged to go off as a potential distraction? Everything I've described is the sign of a professional, and a professional that isn't working alone, a professional that is working in league, in concert with others. Everything about the attempted assassination, and again, even though President Trump isn't dead, it is the successful assassination of President Trump, because it was a success. The Secret Service didn't stop this. The assassin wasn't foiled. The assassin got off a killing shot, and it should have killed Donald Trump. The reason why Trump is alive has nothing to do with the Secret Service, nothing to do with protection. It is either divine intervention or just an act of sheer luck. But this was a successful assassination. Do
you think he was trained? Do you think he trained for this, or someone trained him for it? I mean, how would he have known to do the things that you said? Why would he have had 3 phones, and why would he have crawled on his belly, and why would he have had a drone there? And if there was a drone there and it was communicating to him, why didn't those people say one of our iPhones and desktops, the lovely folks at the NSA don't give a damn about the 4th Amendment, why didn't they pick up his communications?
I can't get into the intelligence that surrounds this. You're on the right track. These are good questions. It wouldn't necessarily be the NSA doing this, but they have counter sniper teams there, and one would logically think that there would be communications protection units there. I mean, there are a couple things that can be done in terms of monitoring communications. You should have cell phones of interest, communication patterns of interest, the ability to block cell phone. It's not my business to get down that route, but you're on the right track. There should have been things that aren't normally talked about happening to protect a former presidential candidate, and potential future president from assassination. Nothing. Again, when we look at the probabilities, the internet is there, and it's a vast resource, and some of the information on it's good, some of the information on it bad, some of the information on it promotes the better aspects of life, some can be used to bring harm. And if one wants to do the research necessary, I guess you could find out certain things. But somebody sitting in their mother's basement looking on looking at videos and then executing it perfectly the first time out is unlikely. There had to be rehearsals, there had to be training, there had to be some sort of coaching taking place. This didn't happen by itself. And so the idea that this is a lone shooter, a disgruntled person, I mean, to be honest, nobody should be taking that seriously. I mean, if it turns out that that's the case, you should only reach that after you've exhausted every other potential option. You don't lead with lone shooter. You lead with, this is a coordinated assassination attempt by a team of highly qualified personnel who have probably infiltrated the inner workings of the presidential security details so that certain things, you have to assume that the Secret Service was in on this. You have to.
You all know that I am a paid spokesperson for Lear Capital, but I'm also a customer, a very satisfied customer. About a year ago, I bought gold and it's now increased. We're back with Scott Ritter. Scott, my apologies. My camera went down and we ran the Lear ad, and now I'm back and we're back together. How is this attempted assassination being viewed in Beijing, in the Kremlin, and in Western Europe? Do you know?
Well, I can't speak about Beijing because I don't have the connectivity with China. I hope one day to do so, because China is an extraordinarily important nation, and the more we know about China, the better we'll be prepared to act responsibly in working with China or dealing with China, whatever direction we choose to go. I do have some connectivity in Russia, and what I can say is that the Russians are viewing this as part and parcel of a systemic breakdown on the part of the United States. They view the attempted assassination against Donald Trump as being of the same, being part of the same overall scene or narrative of what they're calling a soft coup against Joe Biden. Basically elements within the establishment that are opting to take matters into their own hands to eliminate, candidates that aren't going to fulfill their purpose. The physical elimination of Donald Trump, and now we have the political nullification of Joe Biden. From the Russian perspective, this is all part and parcel of the systemic failure of American democracy.
Interesting observations. Let's switch gears, Scott, to what's been happening in Israel. From my perspective here in northern Italy, and not having access to all the sources that I normally do when I'm home in New Jersey, it appears as though the Houthis succeeded in landing explosive devices in Tel Aviv. It appears as though the Israelis were not able to shoot down everything the Houthis sent toward Tel Aviv, though they removed or eliminated most of it. Please tell us what's happening.
Well, the Houthi have been very politically astute from the very beginning. Understand that they have been in a state of war against modern Western-style military since 2014, when the conflict with Saudi Arabia began. Saudi Arabia flying virtually similar aircraft that the Israelis fly, dropping bombs that are made in the USA, using intelligence provided by the U.S. So the Houthi know what they're getting involved in. They know what they're getting into. And they have made a decision that they will not stand silent while the Palestinian people in Gaza and in Palestine and in the West Bank are being brutalized and systemically slaughtered by the Israeli government. They have said that they began a naval blockade of the Red Sea, of the Gulf of Aden, of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, because out of sympathy for the people of Gaza, that blockade won't stop until there's a ceasefire and humanitarian aid comes in, etc. Israel has been carrying out just wanton genocidal bombings of Gaza and the Gazans now on a daily basis. And so what the Houthi have done is given the Israelis a little bit of their own medicine by attacking Tel Aviv, calling it a military target, and saying that the civilians should evacuate. This is pretty much the same instructions that the Israelis give the Gazans. But there's another element to this that everybody seems to be missing. Because yes, the Houthi attacked, vast majority of that which they attacked, the weapons they used were dealt with by the Israelis. It's the Israeli response, though. Just like Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th with the goal of getting the Israelis to overreact, the Houthi attacked Tel Aviv with the goal of getting the Israelis to overreact, and they have. They've struck a port in in Yemen that is essential for the provision of humanitarian aid. It reinforces the narrative that Israel is a genocidal state, and it has prompted the result that I think the Houthi were looking for. The Russians have said that they will not stand on the sideline forever while Israel does what it does. And the Russians have also indicated that they will probably provide advanced weaponry to the Houthi. So the next time the Houthi attack, it won't be with old-fashioned drones. They'll be coming at Israel with advanced Russian weapons that cannot be shot down by Israeli air defense. The Houthi, they're pretty clever. They're pretty smart. They're strategically astute. Israel, once again, walked into an ambush that was set by a member of the Axis resistance who knows the region and knows the politics better than Israel does.
I don't want to veer into American domestic politics, Scott, but I was sick to my stomach when I heard J.D. Vance over the weekend suggest we should consider attacking Iran. What role will Iran play in the battle between Israel and the Houthis?
Iran is the silent partner, the silent big partner. They are definitely behind what the Houthi are doing, what Yemen is doing, this part of Yemen, the Ansarallah movement. They're behind the resistance. Iran is the apex of the axis of resistance. And so Iran plays a major role. Just, again, I respect, we don't want to get down too far, but, J.D. Vance, he was a Marine, but he was a corporal and he was a combat correspondent who didn't see that much combat. He doesn't know that which he talks about. This is literally the voice of one of the more ignorant people in America about military operations. And he's speaking about Iran, a country he doesn't understand. He thinks he's saying things that play well. He should probably have checked with Donald Trump first, because, Donald Trump ordered the assassination of Qasem Soleimani as an act of retribution for the American perception that Soleimani was responsible for the deaths of hundreds of Americans during the American occupation of Iraq and the Iranian support to the resistance. But J.D. Vance should also ask Donald Trump what it felt like to be in the White House as the Iranians signaled that they're going to fire 10 to 12 ballistic missiles against the Al-Assad air base in Iraq. These missiles hit the targets they were looking for with pinpoint precision, and there wasn't anything the United States could do to stop it. And it intimidated Donald Trump to the point where we carried out no further actions. That's the reality of Iran, and that's what J.D. Vance is going to have to be briefed on. He really needs to keep his mouth shut about issues pertaining to national security that, frankly speaking, he won't play a part in. He's going to be the vice president of Donald Trump, a man who consolidates all political power into his person and will not consult with the vice president or, frankly, anybody else when it comes to issues of this nature.
Oh, I'm glad you said that, and I wish I had spoken with you, because for 3 or 4 days I've been arguing with my friends here, making arguments similar to what you made, but without your knowledge and your sophistication. Switching gears yet again, later this week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address a joint session of Congress. The Republicans will treat him like Winston Churchill was treated. What is his goal? What is he going to try and do when he addresses the Congress, as you understand this man?
Well, I mean, things have changed a little bit, too, because now he's stepping into an environment where he actually has far more influence. Biden has stepped aside. Now, he will meet with Biden, but Biden isn't in the future of Israel. The future of Israel is going to be defined by, the Democratic candidate who's no longer named Biden. We don't know the exact name yet. And the Republican candidate whose name is Donald Trump, unless he's successfully taken out by people who don't want him to be the candidate. Then it'll be J.D. Vance. But the point is the focus is on the Congress of the United States, where, look, he has bought the Congress. I mean, he's playing to a paid audience. He's paid these people to sit in their seats and cheer him. And he's paid them so well that the head of the U.S. Congress, the Speaker of the House, Mr. Johnson, has threatened to arrest people and charge them should they somehow disrupt the scripted scene that's going to take place, where there will be more standing ovations than previously. That the idea is to show not just to Netanyahu, because again, He wrote the script. This is something he said has to happen. This is played out for the Israeli people. This is Netanyahu coming. He's been beaten in Gaza. He's being beaten by Hezbollah. The Houthi have humiliated him. Now he's coming here to have the American flag wrapped around him to be anointed by the American Congress so he can go back to Israel and say, America is fully behind me. I have the backing of the United States during these difficult times. This is an act of political desperation on the part of Benjamin Netanyahu because his military is almost in open rebellion, telling him we are fundamentally broken. We're running out of tanks because we don't have any spare parts. We've run out of ammunition. Our troops are exhausted, and we can't go to war against Hezbollah because they'll beat us. That's the reality, and Netanyahu can't take that to the Israeli people. And so instead, he's going to come here, an act of grand political theater, and that's what this is all about. I would like to believe the American people could see through this. Unfortunately, we keep electing the same bought and paid for members of Congress and Senate, knowing that Israel owns them. We keep electing them. So I think the American people are culpable in this as well.
It's Tweedledee and Tweedledum on Israel. We both know that, and I'm glad you raised this incredible statement by the Speaker of the House. He took the same oath when he joined the House of Representatives that you took when you became a Marine, that I took in Army basic training, and that I took again when I became a judge, to abide the Constitution. The language is slightly different, but the essence of the oath is the same. The Constitution, Speaker Johnson, has the speech and debate clause in it. Members cannot be arrested for expressing displeasure with what the Speaker is saying on the floor of the House of Representatives. This is just a disgrace. You can cheer all you want, but if you let Bibi know that you don't appreciate what he says, I might arrest you. I would challenge him to arrest somebody on national television, and let's see what the reaction is.
Yeah, I hope somebody does. Because this is a constitutional issue. This isn't about Israel. This is bigger than Israel. I'm sorry, all you pro-Israeli people out there. There are issues bigger than Israel, like the American Constitution and defense of that Constitution. When you have the Speaker of the House, number 3 in the chain of command, to be President of the United States, make such an outrageous statement, he has to be challenged. Even if you agree with Israel, this is bigger than Israel. This is about who we are and what we are as a nation. And yet, once again, we stand by, and literally, with few exceptions, yourself, Judge, among them, we just don't say or do anything. We let it happen as if this is normal. It's not normal. It's not normal.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for everything we've touched upon today, from Butler, Pennsylvania to the floor of the House of Representatives. I'll be back in the States next week, and we'll have that dinner in upstate New York.
Was Biden. Now, look, I don't see myself as a conspiracy theorist channel. I see myself as a person that looks at the news, looks at social media, keep my eye out on what people are talking about, strange discussions and things like that. And then I give my opinion on these discussions. One of these discussions that is slowly gaining steam on social media is that Joe Biden is missing, and people are asking for proof of life. I can't make it up. This is what people are talking about. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not laughing at the fact that people believe Joe Biden is missing. They want a proof of life, and there are people that are concerned about Joe Biden's well-being. I am laughing at the fact about just how crazy this week has been. And something like this taking place this week just falls in line with everything else that's been happening. Joe Biden had given a very firm stance when it came to staying in the race against Trump. Even after this horrid debate, people said in his own party, they said that you have to step down. No, I am staying. Donors were leaving. No, I'm staying. No matter what was thrown at Biden, he was staying. Then out of nowhere, just randomly, only days after this whole Trump situation, I guess Biden saw the writing on the wall and said, I give up. I'm stepping down. That's it. And you know what? It can play out exactly like that way. Biden saw that this attempt on Trump's life only made him stronger, made him more popular. And he was like, I can't compete against Trump anymore. I'm stepping down. Biden just got this epiphany. But people are pointing out that a couple of things about Biden stepping down do not look right. Something strange is going on here. Some of these points that people are making seems to be pretty valid. For instance, this comes directly from Todd Starnes on Twitter. Todd Starnes states, something smells. Why would President Biden announce such a momentous and historic decision on a Sunday afternoon on a social media platform? And I'm not going to lie to you all, that seemed kind of odd to me too. Why not make such a major announcement on a Monday? Why choose a Sunday? But more importantly, why Twitter? Why would you choose a social media platform to announce that you, as the president, the current president of the United States, is no longer seeking re-election? You are stepping down from the race. Why would you post that on Twitter? Now, I do get that he may be sick. They did say that he had the C-19, but maybe that was the perfect setup. Maybe that was a setup so he would not be seen on camera or not give any major announcements. They can just say he's sick and he's going to release a statement on Twitter. If he was sick, why not wait until you feel better to give such a major announcement? This man is boosted up to the socks, supposedly boosted up to the socks when it comes to the C-19 vaccine. This is his third time, I believe, getting the C-19. So you would think he would wait until he felt better to give such a major announcement and not release this announcement on a social media platform. Even if Biden is later seen on camera giving a speech or talking about dropping out of the race, it still seems like a very tacky way to make such a major announcement. Come to find out, one day after dropping out of the race, there has been an update on Joe Biden's health. Reading this article from Newsweek.com, it says, President Biden completed his 8th dose of Paxlovid, an antiviral C-19 medication this morning, O'Connor wrote. His symptoms have improved significantly. His pulse, blood pressure, respiratory rate, and temperature remain absolutely normal. His oxygen saturation continues to be excellent on room air. His lungs remain clear. The president continues to tolerate treatment without any difficulty and will continue Paxlovid as planned. He continues to perform all of his presidential duties, O'Connor wrote. Joe Biden has had more votes than any president in history combined. And I'm not talking just in the United States, but I'm talking about if you combine every president, every world leader throughout history combined, Joe Biden beats them all many, many times, and not just on Earth. So you would owe it to all those people who voted for you to come out and give them a statement that you are dropping out, not just leave some cheesy post on Twitter. The man is old, Minutes of Horror. He's elderly. He was probably trying to take as much precaution as he possibly could. Well, like I said, he could have given this statement in a speech, a live speech, when he felt better, but whatever. Todd Starnes also says the letter he posted was not written on White House stationery, and his signature appeared to be photoshopped. Also, Biden's signature was underlined, and typically he does not underline his name. That is also true. You would think this letter would be on a official White House letterhead. Also, the signature does look a little off. It does look photoshopped. People will say that maybe he wasn't well enough to sign his own name. But as the previous article had stated, as his doctor had stated, he's doing fine. Now, if somebody was indeed trying to forge his signature, it does look a little forged, but maybe he had a hard time writing. I don't know. But if somebody was indeed trying to forge his name, why would they add the underline under his signature? Something he normally does not do. I mean, why make the forgery so obvious? But then again, why would he add the underline? If you look at the R in his supposed forged signature, it does look rather off to the other R's in his other signatures. Todd Starnes continues to say, Joe Biden's staff, his aides, only found out once the message had been posted on Twitter, and cabinet members were notified by the chief of staff, not Biden. Now that is rather suspicious. Biden's aides were not aware that Joe Biden had stepped down until they saw the message on Twitter like everybody else. The cabinet members were notified only 1 minute before The entire public knew that Joe Biden was stepping down. Now look, I can look past the signature, I can look past the weird way he made the announcement, but it's rather odd how not even his aides knew. That the cabinet members only knew 1 minute before everybody else knew. And they were only notified by the chief of staff, not Biden. Even if Joe Biden does come out on camera and give some kind of announcement, give some kind of speech, will that really be Biden? Will that be AI Biden? Will it be a body double? He will come out on camera, give a speech, and people will say, there you go, mental whore, there's Joe Biden. See, you were wrong once again. And they will oddly look past the fact that we have AI. But going back to what Todd Starnes is saying, and we're not even halfway through to what he's saying here, the last time the public saw Biden, he feebly walked down the stairs of Air Force One and had to be physically assisted into the presidential limo. He has not been seen in the public since. I looked the statement up, and that was only 4 days ago. That's not really odd. That's not really a long time to not be seen on camera. But as you can see, he's not wearing a mask, and he's around people. If he has a C-19, you would think he would be wearing a mask. Todd Starnes says, how do we know Biden wrote that letter? And how do we know that Biden posted the letter on his Twitter page? There wasn't even an official White House photograph of the moment. His brother, Frank Biden, told CBS News that health absolutely was the deciding factor on the decision. And then he told CBS selfishly, I will have him back to enjoy whatever time he has left. Is President Biden still alive? Is he awake? Is he alert? Is he in command of his facilities? With respect, we need to see proof of life. Todd Starnes really raises some good points. I don't think it's a bad thing to ask. I don't think it makes you a conspiracy theorist to want to see some proof of life when it comes to the president of the United States, especially how he stepped down when it comes to re-election. Now, look, there are many theories when it comes to Joe Biden. There are many people today that believe the real Joe Biden passed away a long time ago, that there have been actors playing as Joe Biden the whole time. You can't have it both ways. You can't say they're going to get rid of Biden now when they could have easily used one of his actors to make this statement. That is only if you believe Joe Biden passed away a long time ago. But if you believe that Joe Biden has been the real Joe Biden the whole time, then this does look rather suspicious, I won't lie, especially given the fact Joe Biden's aides only knew when the public knew. And they only found out, and we only found out through his Twitter page. Now, I don't know if I am 100% on board with the fact that Joe Biden is missing now. He does have a press conference in a few days. If he does randomly cancel that press conference, if he looks like AI, if something looks rather off about Biden, if he's by himself and not surrounded by people, then yes, I think I will accept the fact that they got rid of Biden. But this does indeed raise a good point, and it really has my curiosity. Let's see how these next few days play out. Let's see if Biden does make this appearance. Let's see if he does give this press conference. I am really curious now. But then again, even if he does give this press conference, does it even really matter? They do have technologies to make it seem like he's there when he's really not. This world is so crazy, and it's only getting crazier. But I do want to hear from you.
Good Lord. Oh, man. Okay, this is strange. Okay, it says here on Daily Mail, leading political figures fear there may be a very sinister reason for Biden's disappearance since dropping out of the 2024 race. Now, some people, I've been on Twitter, people think that he may be extremely ill or gone already. Now, do you know what makes me think that this is a possibility? I was watching a documentary on Michael Jackson, and I believe that it was either like hours or like a day before people were notified that he passed away. It was kind of like it's like, okay, he's already gone. Now we have to figure out how we're going to let the people know that this icon is gone, type of thing. Like, they got to plan it. They got to figure it out. But they'll tell us, oh, he was just rushed to the hospital. But he'll be gone at that time. So while we're stewing, trying to figure out, oh God, is Michael going to live? He's already gone, and they're just figuring out how to break the news to us. So it says here, political figures both on the left and right have suggested U.S. President Joe Biden is seriously ill or even dead over the way he announced his departure from the 2024 election race. Controversial Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, 37, posted on X on Monday asking for proof of life from the 81-year-old and even gave the president a deadline. Oh, by the way, I think it's really strange how now that people on the left, now that Biden's dropped out now, and I was looking at a video that was really slanted left, like super slanted left, and everyone in the comments was just like, Trump's too old to be running. Trump's too old. It was like, when nobody's saying that before. Yeah, see, I told y'all, this is why I won't get fully invested on either side, and I stay neutral. I may lean right because I'm controversial. I'm not a controversial person. I'm a conservative person. But nah, people just, man, the tribalism is incredible. And the goal post switching and the gaslighting, and it's just ridiculous, man. Anyway, controversial Congresswoman. Okay, sure, I said, okay. Republican firebrand who has previously been embroiled in multiple scandals and conspiracy theories, said, I demand proof of the life of Joe Biden today at 5 p.m. He needs to get in front of the camera and discuss, because I can't even talk, discuss if he's aware that he dropped out. Hiding it is completely unacceptable. Biden was last seen on July 17th. And is currently receiving treatment for a mild COVID infection at the White House, with his team sharing their latest update Monday. There's no suggestions or evidence that Biden is suffering health issues. Any such illness could present a major national security issue and would quickly be made public, so a temporary stand-in could be announced. Journalist Glenn Greenwald at the anti-Biden left-winger also posted on the social media site, deeming it strange and wrong that Biden hadn't given a televised announcement or appeared in person since dropping the bombshell. This is interesting. This is very interesting. So I went over to Twitter looking around, and Charlie Kirk posted this. Got a weird lead on a story that people should look into. I got a call from a source close to Las Vegas Metro. The official story was that Joe Biden's trip was cut short last week due to COVID. However, according to this source, U.S. Secret Service informed Las Vegas Metro that there was an emergency situation involving Joe Biden and to close necessary streets so that the POTUS could be transported immediately to Universal Medical, which they deemed to do in earnest. Then mysteriously, there was a stand down order, and the USSS informed local Vegas PD that they were going to medevac POTUS to Johns Hopkins, which they presumed meant fly him back east ASAP. Apparently, the rumor mill in the police department was that Joe Biden was dying or possibly already dead. I didn't think too much about this lead. Seemed too wild to be true,
But given that Joe Biden has been out of the public sight for days and dropped out of the race via an X post, his brother James indicated health was a factor. I'm beginning to grow more curious if COVID or something else has been more serious than reported. If anyone with the Las Vegas Metro has information, please contact me. Okay. Then he gave an update. I received multiple emails like the one confirming many elements of the story. Many have confirmed that a call went out to block streets to get Biden to the University Medical Trauma Center ASAP. And then the plane abruptly changed and they got him out on Air Force One very quickly. I did not have not confirmed the IDs of these people, but there are an overwhelming number of stories corroborating essentially the same account that I felt comfortable sharing. I have some diving deeper into this now. Wild, right? See the email? Charlie, your info was solid. I retired from Las Vegas Metro in blank. My sources texted me this just now. We're making plans to UMC Trauma First, called in the box squads to come help shut down the route. Then it changed to taking him to the airport. He was on the plane fast and took off faster than I've ever seen Air Force One leave the airport. Wow. So I guess until it's confirmed, take it with a grain of salt, but people are reporting on this right now. So post comments down below. Let me know what you all think about this. If you have any more info, post it down below and I'll see you in the next video.
Well, while all of the drama surrounding President Biden dropping out has sucked up the news headlines, Kamala Harris becoming president of the United States, there was an assassination, by the way, of a former president that has many more questions than answers this morning. And this weekend, we now have confirmation that there was more than one shooter. There was a conspiracy to assassinate the president of the United States. We don't need to wait for Congress to wrap up their investigation grilling Director Cheadle of the Secret Service. We already have independent verification of this, and from sources from the Secret Service and without, and eyewitnesses and audio forensics. So I don't give a rat's ass what Director Cheadle has to say. She's proven herself worthless. This weekend, we do have confirmation there was more than one shooter. There was a conspiracy to assassinate the president of the United States, and there was a mysterious man in a gray suit that no one can find for some reason. He's gone dark. What the hell is happening? Senator Ron Johnson told Maria Bartiromo that he has learned that right after Thomas Matthew Crooks was shot and killed, a guy in a gray suit just climbed up the ladder and on the roof where Crooks was dead, laying there dead, and started asking the local law enforcement to send photos of Crooks's body to him. Like, here's a cell phone number. I want you to send these photos to me right now. The man didn't identify himself. And it's very curious that he didn't have a cell phone on him. Right? Who in this day and age goes to a Trump rally wearing a suit and you don't have a cell phone on you? So he couldn't take photos himself. He said, just take the photos and then send them to this phone number. Oh, that's curious. So you don't want us tracking cell phone data. I guess that's the point, right? We don't want to track you. So you're here by yourself without a cell phone on you. Very, very curious. Law enforcement then acquiesced. They sent photos. I've seen these photos. We're not going to show them to you. Crooks with a hole through his forehead. When the man was contacted, he said he was an ATF agent, but now he's gone totally dark. He's silent. We can't find him. Senator Ron Johnson explained these new details on Maria Bartiromo's show. Watch.
The local officers went up to that roof and started taking pictures of the dead body, of the shooter's body. So suddenly a guy in a gray suit walks up the ladder and goes up to the roof. And this guy in the gray suit, who didn't appear to have credentials, everybody assumed he was the Secret Service. So he tells one of the local law enforcement, send those pictures to this cell phone. And he gives him a number. And everybody assumed, well, that must be Secret Service. It turns out it wasn't Secret Service.
Some guy in a suit walks up the ladder. They believe you Secret Service. I'm not sure they gave credentials, but that's part of again, Maria, this is so preliminary. I'm issuing this. I'm providing this information, a much more detailed timeline to prompt others to come forward. We need to complete this picture. We have a lot of puzzle pieces to fill in here.
Is it odd to you that the locals were being told to send the pictures to the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency, ATF? Where does ATF come in?
It's very odd. It's the oddity starts with the fact that local law enforcement were just tasked with securing the perimeter, told to go cover that AGR building, not really told where to set up. So they set up on the second floor. They went to that AGR building at 10:30 in the morning. So they were stationed there well in advance. You know, they noticed this suspicious character at 5:10. They took a photo of him at 5:14. The president was shot at 6:11. You know, so again, an hour has passed. You know, again, they don't communicate. They didn't have communication, same channels with their law enforcement patrol officers. They weren't in communication with the Secret Service other than going through the Butler County Communication Center. So again, it's everything you would assume about Secret Service protection of a former president was not true. It didn't happen.
Oh, that's a senator. It's not some Yahoo.
Right.
You know?
Peddling conspiracies.
That's a senator of the United States, a highly respected senator, one of the few, by the way. Now, we reported last week, by the way, Frank Rizzo in our chat, Frank Rizzo, I love that. It says he was the Iran guy, I guess. Right. So that's the point, right? Like over the weekend, I pointed out how all of this talk now you're hearing, it's like, oh, it must have been Iran that was involved in this. Like he had, phones that were set. He had phones, encrypted phones, 3 of them or so that were set out and overseas encrypted phones and all of this stuff that I detailed this weekend. So I guess it is the Iran guy.
You know what
I think
I'm
it's
waiting
just the
for?
rebranding of
I was just going to say, I'm waiting for them to say, oh, because of this crowd, what was it called? Crowd fund or whatever, the thing that happened with Microsoft CrowdStrike. Like, oh, we lost all the data. We lost the recordings. We lost the, all this data we've gathered. Like, because it just seems coincidental that happened. Yeah. So I'm waiting for that to be the excuse that we can't be transparent because unfortunately we lost it all.
Yeah. Oh, we lost it all. All the data, like going back to 2015, all of our data has been wiped. So
wait, what was Philip going to say? I don't want to discourage.
Oh, it wasn't super important. I was going to comment that it could just be a rebranding of the Men in Black. They're now the Men in Gray. They're much
I had that thought too.
They're
yes.
David Byrne oversized suits on a hot day. That's what they are. Now, we reported last week on our show that our sources were telling us that the shots were fired from multiple locations in the direction of the water tower. Now, we know that there were at least 2 shooters. That has been confirmed. There was a second shooter, according to nearly a dozen eyewitnesses, multiple audio forensics analysis, and now we're hearing from United States members of Congress that is the case. Chris Martinson, a PhD, posted this on X, a fascinating video. I'm not going to go through all of it here, but the narrative of Crooks being a lone gunman is 100% provably false, which means any deflection to investigating security lapses is evidence of a cover-up. The evidence I present today comes from analyzing and then comparing the audio files from 2 separate video recordings, one taken right in front of Trump, the other from just to the side of the American Glass building that Crooks was spotted on. As a reminder, audio forensics experts have already concluded that the audio signatures from 3 weapons could be resolved from whichever audio recordings they analyzed. Yes, the long-lost art form of audio forensics, which is highly valuable, which is how we were able to deduce multiple problems in the conspiracy against JFK. Here is Chris Martinson explaining at least a piece of this. Again, it's a 30-minute and deep dive analysis. I'm going to show you just a few key moments here of his analysis. Watch.
Here's just the first 3 shots from that video. I haven't done anything, no audio. I haven't done any enhancements. This is both of these video audio pieces are exactly pulled straight from the video itself. Here's 1, 2, and 3 to start. Okay, listen to that again. And one more time. Okay. Now let's listen to the next string. Ooh. We just have an absolutely different sound between the first three. There's no echo. It's much further away. It's more muffled. It's just not in the same place at all. But these next ones, very different sound, totally different weapons. Okay.
Totally different weapons, totally different location. And the echo is completely different because the echo reverberating off of buildings, while the other is way far away, in our estimation, 488 yards away, which is not where Thomas Crooks was laying. So now here is the audio analysis, or his discussion of this from video, from the second video, and how he says this is clearly two shooters.
And remember, we already have the analysis from audio experts elsewhere saying there's a difference between weapon A and weapon B. And I can show you that the rounds fired from weapon B were also aimed at the stage. Okay, so this is important. Two weapons, one fires a string of 3, another fires a string of 5 or 6, depending on how we count, and off they go. And they were also out hitting the crowd and headed towards Trump. Okay, this is important because now we do not have a lone gunman anymore. Okay.
So, and very important to know that these were not like Secret Service snipers. These were being fired at the stage. The head of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, still has a job today, which is stunning. And today she spent the morning dodging questions on Capitol Hill in front of Congress, and it didn't go well. So here's some flavor of the day.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest. Mr. Chairman.
Love Nancy Mace. And watch this stunning moment during questioning by Representative Fallon, and you can see if you can catch something. Pay very close attention to something that she says in response. I almost spit out my coffee when I heard it.
Director, do you have the ability personally, and do you have the authority to beef up security of any of your protectees?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So were you also aware there was a credible threat President Trump was facing? He was facing a heightened security threat to a foreign adversary?
Yes.
So given that there was an increased threat to President Trump's life, was he provided a full security complement akin to what a sitting U.S. president would receive?
He was provided a full complement of security based on the threat assessment that we had.
That's not my question.
And the venue.
My question is, if he'd been the sitting president, would he have had the same security he had on July 13th, or would have been beefed up?
There is a difference between the sitting president.
So your answer is he didn't.
And continuity of government and the responsibility
So he
that we
did
have.
not. Okay, there wasn't a CAT team, the full CAT team on site. There wasn't counter surveillance teams on site. But this is the thing. You just said you had the ability to beef up the security. You knew about the threat, and you didn't. And that's as telling as it is chilling.
Did you catch what she said? Continuity of government? What? Why? Why? There's a difference between the sitting president and the continuity of government and the responsibility that we have, she said. Can you explain that? Continuity of government? Really? Okay, could you elaborate on that? I don't know that Fallon heard it, and I wish that other members of Congress would have heard it and really pushed her on that. What do you mean? Why is there a difference here in the continuity of government? What does that have to do with anything?
Well, okay, then let me see. What are the plans when Obama speaks in public? What are the plans when Bill Clinton speaks in public, or any of the Bushes, or anything like that? So, okay, that's easy to prove. Show us, like, okay, we have tiered Secret Service members and past presidents get the lower tier. Why? Yeah, okay, prove that then. You know, not just act confused that something, yeah, I have no answers for you.
Representative Andy Biggs, was Mr. Crooks acting alone? She says, I'm going to have to refer you to the FBI once again. Watch.
Your agency has a no-fail mission, and on Saturday, July 13th, your agency spectacularly failed. The failure resulted in the death of Corey Comprador and serious injury to 2 other rally attendees, David Dutch and James Copenhaver, besides the injuries to President Trump. It is unfathomable that a 20-year-old on the radar of Secret Service and local law enforcement before President Trump went on stage was able to climb onto the roof of a building with a rifle and fire off multiple rounds before he was neutralized. Was Mr. Crooks acting alone?
Again, I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation.
Was he just a lone gunman?
I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation for motive.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Why would she dig her heels in and not say this was unacceptable? It won't happen again. The buck stops with me. Someone else can lead this better. Why?
Well, she did say the buck stopped with me like last week, but then she's been kept from speaking. And the only reason she's speaking is because she was subpoenaed.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on. What deep state Alejandro Mayorkas and part of the Biden administration doesn't want her to speak publicly? Well, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, we can't stand her here on this show, but surprisingly, she asks one of the best questions during this hearing. Listen.
You established earlier that the building upon which the shooter operated from was outside of that established perimeter, correct, for the Butler, Pennsylvania event?
It was outside of our secure perimeter, yes.
Now, that building was, I believe, 500. How far away was that building from the president?
It was approximately 200 yards.
200 yards. Now, the individual used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question is, why does the Secret Service perimeter, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advance was completed. The determination of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
And so what I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
A perimeter was established, and even though there were buildings that were outside of that perimeter, it wasn't just that building, there were a number of buildings in the area, and there was overwatch that was created to help mitigate some of those buildings.
Okay.
Great
That's
question.
interesting.
From AOC.
And her answer, well, there's lots of weapons, could have thrown a stone.
So why
from
was the
there.
Pac-Man piece of it cut out? You just decided to.
It would have been just fine if they had a flamethrower, right? And we were thinking that maybe that was a possibility.
We have slingshots. People bring bow and arrow. By the way, she also lied in front of
bow and
Congress.
arrow range.
Yeah,
It is.
It's in Nerf gun range. She lied in front of Congress when she said that backpacks are okay. She also talked about a rangefinder. Rangefinder is not suspect. She said backpacks not okay. And yet, why did the Secret Service, as part of when they sent out an email to those arriving at this event, say backpacks are strictly prohibited? That's interesting.
Yeah.
So backpacks are strictly prohibited, and we showed those emails here on the show. But now you're saying that's not a problem. So
Did she not know that?
To conflict with previous information. We have to get directly into this one because Thomas Matthew Crooks High School is coming out and saying everything you heard about Thomas Matthew Crooks happens to be completely false. Everything you heard from news, media, investigators, and all these different interviews does not line up what we know about Thomas Matthew Crooks. Is it possible that Bethel Park High School happens to be lying to us? It's always possible. I do not know Bethel Park High School, but I do know news, media, and the powers that be have lied to us many times in the past. When investigators were looking into Thomas Matthew Crook's background, investigators found that there were no red flags. Everybody that spoke on Thomas Matthew Crook's behalf said he was a nice guy. He was a loner. He stayed to himself, and he exhibited no red flags. It was hard to build an MO against Thomas Matthew Crooks. But as time progressed and things were looking more and more off about this whole situation, a story was being put together. People saw Thomas Matthew Crooks as a potential school pow-pow person. There was these weird scripted interviews coming out that put Thomas Matthew Crooks in a bad light. News and media were interviewing students from his high school, and they seemed to remember every little detail about Thomas Matthew Crooks. Now, all these red flags were coming out of nowhere. But what was most important was the fact that Thomas Matthew Crooks happened to be on the rifle team to make it seem like he had experience, knowledge on how to handle a rifle, that he was interested in guns. For instance, read this article right here. Thomas Crooks was real evil, but a good shot, according to shooting range classmate. Now that's going to be really important later on in the story. Well, Bethel Park High School came out and said, this is not the Thomas Crooks that we knew. News came out on July 20th, and I'm reading this article from Yahoo News. Trump shooter Crooks wasn't on rifle team or bullied, according to the school. Bethel Park High School officials have contradicted reports that Trump shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks was bullied, threatening, and a member of the school's rifle team. So if we are going to take Bethel Park High School for face value, then as I had said in previous videos, someone is building a story against Thomas Matthew Crooks as they go along. This is a build-a-bear narrative. Now, I don't see why Bethel Park High School would lie unless they're trying to protect their school's image and their rifle team's image. They really do not have a reason to lie when it comes to this story. Has anybody pointed out the fact that Thomas Matthew Crooks happens to be 20 years old? He graduated high school about 2 or 3 years ago. Why are they not interviewing anybody from his place of work? He worked at a nursing home. I would think that would be more relevant information than where he went to high school. News, media, and investigators only interviewed his place of work one time. Come to find out, his employer stated that Thomas Matthew Crooks exhibited no red flags. He was a very good employee. So what Thomas Crooks' employer is stating kind of matches what Bethel Park High School is coming out and saying. Can we interview anybody that was not from Thomas Matthew Crooks High School or his middle school? Can we interview anyone that worked with Thomas Matthew Crooks? How does anybody look at this story and say everything we're being told from news and media looks fine? Anything outside the narrative is a crazy conspiracy theory. Now, getting back to this article, in updated statements posted Saturday, officials said they have no record of Crooks ever trying out or being dismissed from the rifle team due to character or performance concerns, as previously reported. The school says it's possible that Crooks informally attended a practice, such as sneaking in, took a shot, and never returned. The school said in its statement, however, the school added they do not have any record of that happening. There were also reports that Thomas Matthew Crooks made threats against Bethel Park High School, that he was a potential school pow-pow person, but a statement also dispelled reports that Crooks made threats of violence against the school, describing Crooks as a quiet, bright young man who generally got along with his teachers and his classmates. And according to the school, there was no indication in his grades or behavior that he was being bullied. News and media aside, Bethel Park School District updated this information on Thomas Matthew Crooks on their own website. They put this statement on their own website. The most recent updated statement was once again July 20th. Continuing to read from the statement, Bethel Park High School said, "We will work closely with law enforcement investigators and share information as appropriate regarding school district policies, the active investigation, and law enforcement protocols." The school district stated, "Otherwise, we would direct all media inquiries to those handling the investigation for more information." Then a couple days later, Bethel Park School District says, wait a minute, what news, media, and investigators are telling the public happens to be completely false, and we are going to correct the record. The school district's website says that Thomas Matthew Crooks had no involvement in the rifle team. there was no threats of violence coming from Thomas Crooks. That's a false claim. And that there is a painful misconception that Thomas Crooks was relentlessly bullied in school, which may have led to this incident involving Trump's rally. This is once again not coming from Yahoo News, not coming from any other news source, but directly from Bethel Park School District. They say at the end of this article, Mr. Crooks was known as a quiet, bright young man who generally got along with his teachers and classmates. Since graduating in 2022, Mr. Crooks earned an associate's degree in engineering science from the Community College of Allegheny County and worked as a dietary aide at Bethel Park Skilled Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. So wait, hold up. He went to a community college. He has an associate's degree. Why are we not interviewing any of his teachers from his community college? Does anybody know him that took classes with him they can interview? Why are they always interviewing people from his high school? Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Can we please see a recent photo of Thomas Matthew Crooks? The school district even says at the end of this article, it would be wildly irresponsible for us to speculate on his state of mind in the 2 years since we last saw Thomas Crooks. And they are correct. From everything we have known about Thomas Crooks, apparently he led a completely different life after leaving high school. He held down a job, which once again, his employers had nothing bad to say about him. He went to college and he got a 2 years associate's degree. So high school should be a non-factor for Thomas Matthew Crooks at this point. Because Thomas Crooks did not have a political background, because his MO did not make any sense to this Trump event, they have to build up this MO. Again, it's a Build-A-Bear. Now news and media are dropping articles that Thomas Matthew Crooks researched school pal Ethan Crumbley, his family, before the attack. Those interviews where news and media were interviewing students who had attended Bethel Park High School, it was clear as day those interviews were scripted.
He was bullied almost every day. In what way? Can you explain? I mean, he would sit alone at lunch. I mean, he was just an outcast, and you know how kids are nowadays, so they're going to see someone like that, and they're going to target him because they think it's funny or whatever. So it's the best way I can describe it. And it's honestly kind of sad. Like, I don't want to say this is what provoked it, but you never know.
Yeah, you said he was a loner?
Yeah. I want to say he was a loner more because he was quiet, but like he was just bullied. Like he was bullied so much.
This is high school.
Yeah.
What did they, do you remember at all what they said to him or called him?
No. He was just made fun of, I guess, for the way he dressed or his appearance.
The school district stating that Thomas Matthew Crooks was a brilliant student, he was an outgoing student showing no signs of bullying, does match with other reports where they are saying Trump rally shooter was a math whiz at school, had won a $500 prize. Thomas Crooks graduated in 2022 from Bethel Park High School. According to the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, he received a $500 star award from the National Math and Science Initiative, according to a newspaper. So this is wild. You now have the school, Bethel Park School, pushing back and speaking up for Thomas Matthew Crooks' character. Bethel Park High School stood up and said, we are not going to allow you to make up this narrative. The one thing that will always stand out to me, the one thing that I cannot wrap my mind around, is once again, investigators, police collected DNA samples at the crime scene. That day they got a hit back, that hit being Thomas Matthew Crooks. But where did they get the DNA to compare the DNA at the crime scene? Where did they get Thomas Matthew Crooks' DNA from? From what I understand, to match DNA on a criminal, they would have to already be in the criminal system. From what we understand, Thomas Matthew Crooks had no previous criminal record, no previous criminal history. So he should have no DNA in the system to match with what was found on the roof. So we have to ask ourselves, if Thomas Matthew Crooks was not the man on the roof, as we have been shown in pictures, photos, and so forth, that person on the roof lying prone on the roof does not look like Thomas Matthew Crooks. Everything that we hear about his background does not match with what took place at this incident. if who was on the roof was actually Jackswell Munthrick, again, I know that's not his name, but YouTube is monitoring for people saying his actual name. But if that was not Thomas Matthew Crooks on the roof, then who was Thomas Matthew Crooks? Thank you so much for watching. If you like,
Cool, follow me.